From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, welcome to Space Brains, the show where we joy watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey and this is Mark.
Hiya, tonight is episode 35, so it is a classic, and we are talking about the 1993 smash hit action science fiction Demolition Man with the one and only Sylvester Stallone. That's my bad impression of Sylvester Stallone, but at least I can pronounce his name, I believe. So, which Demolition Man is a science fiction film, obviously, because we're reviewing it. And he's a good old 90s hardcore action police officer. He's frozen in time and he's brought back into the future to kind of handle a 90s criminal. So there is your spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning if you have not seen this film yet.
Nope.
Where have you been living?
I don't know.
Go back. Maybe you've been in Los Angeles in 1996. That's a bad place to live, apparently.
Well, maybe you're cryogenically... Is that the right word in this movie?
Yes.
Frozen, like they are in this film. And didn't you... Oh, no, okay.
Go back and watch the film before too much more about it.
Because we've got to talk about this.
And then come and listen to us because we're going to talk about the whole thing.
Yes, the whole thing. It's well and truly worth talking about. Demolition Man. And it is directed by Marco Brambilla, I believe is how you pronounce his name. It'd be good if Marco spoke to us about that pronunciation. It's always our number one question. What was your number one takeaway, Surrey, from Demolition Man?
Number one takeaway is that freedom is a muscle car.
Okay.
Everyone knows that.
Please explain.
A red big engine muscle car is the symbol of freedom in every American movie.
It is, isn't it?
If you have a look at, Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
They're getting around in all these done-up Japanese sports cars because that's very common. But what's the big hero car that the big hero drives? It's like a Chevelle or something.
Yeah.
Big
Chevrolet, maybe.
Yeah,
if I'm right. I don't know.
Or is it an Impala? Someone's going to have to get on me about it. It's a big American muscle car.
If you're in Australia, it'd be like a Holden, Kingswood,
it'd be a Tirana or something.
Tirana, yeah. Commodore was more modern, but in the set because this car, I know she says it's a 70s car, so it'd probably equip it to a Holden Kingswood, which I used to have. So a real man's car.
A man's car.
Yeah.
Or a woman's car as well, but back in the 70s it was advertised as a man's car.
Yeah. And look, there is a bit, and I'll come back to it a little bit later, of Demolition Man, because it's that 90s action that, the man does do most of the heavy lifting in this film. And Sandra Bullock kind of takes a little bit of a backseat. I found that a little bit of a point of difference now that it's 2020. I can see how gender has changed a little bit.
It is pointed out a bit, though.
It is pointed out,
made a bit of fun there that, there's whole male aggression. She makes a thing about,
she's
put
into
the
it.
Hormones away and tells the two boys off for getting and stuff. And so it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek there, pointing out that he is a dinosaur from an age gone past. So it's not like watching Crocodile Dundee. I watched. Oh my God! Do not watch it. Do not show that to your kids if you want your kids to grow up.
Hey! You got to look out for the positives. Sorry, look for the positives.
I'm just saying that the positive is that
they shouldn't watch it.
Wait till they're a bit older and they can appreciate irony.
Yeah, that's true. The comedy is a bit
because I showed the kids that film because I remember as a kid back in '88 or whenever it was I watched it, and it was a good bit of fun. And then I was just watching it again and going, ooh, these aren't the lessons I want to be teaching my kids.
It's a knife. It's a knife. Call it a knife.
That was fine. That's not a knife.
I do love. There's a scene in that, totally not science fiction, where David Gallipoli, the Indigenous actor, like he comes out of the dark, and they kind of make it like he's the bad
he's
Aboriginal
stalking
black. He's
them,
stalking them, and Crocodile Dundee plays off that to the American woman, but then he's like. He's actually a sophisticated Sydney person. The only reason why he's out there is like dads made him come out to the bush.
Bloody dads made him come out.
Come out for Corby, and it's I like that. It's a good joke, I think, on that. It subverts, like what you're saying here. There's a bit of subversion of gender that Sandra Bullock or Huxley, who she plays, is actually quite masculine. Like she's into all the masculine things, isn't she? And especially when you compare her to. The other main police officer played by Benjamin Bratt, Garcia.
Yes.
He's actually quite feminine, isn't he?
Yes.
And then even the chief of police, he's not the hard-hitting chief of police that we're used to.
He sort of tries to be,
he tries to be, but he's not. No. And so it's like Huxley, Sandra Bullock, is the one that is the tough, kind of into the action, into the macho stuff. And that is subverting it. But what I mean is, there still is like basically that traditional arc that
if you're looking
Stallone has to save the day.
If you're looking at the percentages of male to female, and this is an interesting media study I saw once, was basically saying that photographs or movies where there's about 1/4 to 1/3 of the people in the film or footage as female, and 2/3 to 3/4 of male are seen as normal distributions.
Yes, yeah.
And I didn't believe it at first, but I had a look at some of the example pictures they showed, and you have a look and can't help but think of that looks roughly, fair or even.
Yeah.
But when you count it, sure enough, there's actually only 1/3 or, at most 1/3 women in the picture. Yeah. And a lot of these movies are very much like they're changing quite a bit now.
Yeah, they are changing now, which
they're
is
really,
great.
really definitely, being a bit more 50-50, a bit more, we call it representative of populations, which is nice. But if you have a look at a lot of movies, they'll have the two male friends and the quirky female friend. And you'll see that in all of the kids shows as well. Going back, there will be two guys and one girl, and the girl will be the brainy one, or the slightly weird one. So
we won't get into it 'cause right now. We need to get into this episode. Otherwise, being a classic is going to go for about 14 hours. But there is that Bechamel test, which a feminist came up with. It's like the 3 rules of a female character, and I actually think that Huxley probably ticks those rules in a positive way, so it's.
She's got a distinct personality,
she's got her
separate
own
from
characteristics. She does take her own action. But then does she only ever really... Because
there are no other female characters.
There is no other female characters, but also does she only ever really talk about Stallone? Does she only ever actually talk about what he's doing? Like, she doesn't actually cause her own action, because that's that third challenge for a female. So, but I mean, I agree. I mean, I think it's just a pretty stock standard thing. Even go onto Netflix, have a look at 10 films. If you just take 10 films, how many protagonists, the main character... are male and how many are female, because always the protagonist drives the story anyway. It's their story. So in this case, it's Spartan.
John Spartan. They're always going to have these strong ass names.
It's always John, isn't it?
John or Jack.
When his real name is Sylvester, Sylvester wouldn't work, would it? But it's John's story. So take 10 films, he's the protagonist, how many of those 10 films have a male protagonist versus a female protagonist? And for me, it's like probably 9 out of 10 are male. Like, you would find that would be the case. That means that the female is always, second fiddle to the main character, which predominantly is male. So it's like, well, that's the ratio in my mind. It's about 9 out of 10, So, but anyway, we don't want to go too deep down into that. Probably you need to ask me a question, I think. Sorry.
Okay, I know. You just sort of got me thinking about all this movie.
I know, we're starting to go
which of these movies have I... It's like... No, okay. Well, the question then about this movie is it a hope, is it a warning, or an experiment?
Now, this is a tough one, I reckon. I reckon this is a tough one. For me, I'm going to roll into warning a little bit reluctantly, because I also think it's possibly an experiment. So it'd be really good for anyone out there listening to let me know or correct me. But I think
it could easily be a hope as well, right?
Yeah,
human nature can change. We can accommodate.
Yeah, okay, I get that, because that's kind of basically what happens. But I think it's a warning because society in the film at the start, so it's Los Angeles, 1996, Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like a real version of maybe what Los Angeles or society as a bigger whole was heading in the 90s. Being a 90s teenager, when you watched this film, it felt like that's where society was heading. Like we're getting very violent, movies violent, games violent. It felt, we had, if you take American culture, they had the LA riots in about 92 or 93. It felt like society was crumbling a little bit. I think also like the criminal system seemed like people were go to jail. Same here in Australia, like people get convicted of murder, but then they're only in jail for a few years, and it felt like there was more violence on the street. So this is where I think this is as a warning, is that, okay, if society kind of keeps creeping towards that violent future, at some point there's probably a break that then leads to either a dystopian future or like we live underground or like a split, isn't it? Like society will split into, if you've got money, you're going to be in this like compound that's all safe. And then if you don't have money, you're out there on the streets, So to me, I see it more as a warning. And I kind of then think, well, it could be an experiment because it's kind of showing you, well, this is what society is like if we just let people be violent. And so again, also even at the end of the film, why I think it's a warning is that then Sylvester or Spartan says, like Edgar, played by Dennis Leary, says, let's just go wild and have a party and, go crazy in the street and just, drink all night and, have an orgy and all that sort of stuff. And the chief is like, what do we do? And he actually says, hang on, you do sort of 50% of what you're thinking and you do 50% of what you're thinking and you'll kind of somehow work it out.
Get somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
Which is very, again, like, he doesn't want it to be as violent as the 90s, but he also doesn't want it to be as clean cut.
No, I did like that he learnt and grew by the end of it and was kind of reconsidering, going, you know what, there are advantages to having this ordered, calm sort of civilization.
We've got to meet somewhere in the middle, but because
there's disadvantages because there are people literally fighting to get food, only because they have not taken that choice of. Swallowing the blue pill and being part of the overall thing. Like, there's no place for this. The point was being that you're either in this extreme pacifist society, or you're entirely outcast. There's no room for. Okay, well, some people like to be really serene, and some people like to have take a bit more risks with their life. They want to have a bit of spicy food. Which is banned also.
But even like the whole point of like when Phoenix, played by Wesley Snipes, rocks up and he's just super violent because they are so clean and cut. That's the whole thing, is that they don't know what to do. And so it shows you how vulnerable their society is if suddenly you have a maniac. And there is that line in this film that happens a couple of times where it's like you send a maniac to take care of a maniac.
Send a maniac to catch a maniac.
So I think I agree. Like at the end, John Spartan actually, he sort of says, I'm beginning to like this world. Like I'm beginning to like this order. Yeah. It's too order, but we need to make it happen. Because he's kind of come from that, he is a maniac, like, because he's come from that 90s violence. There's a little child watching us. So yeah, I think there is that sort of idea of, a warning, because it's like if you let society crumble that much, you end up with people like Spartan and Phoenix that are just like, they're too far gone. They're maniacs. They both admit they're maniacs, but then you can't have the world in Demolition Man in the future is so the opposite that doesn't work either.
Yeah, it's a pendulum there, isn't it? If it swings one way a long way, can swing back the other way, the exact opposite.
Which probably makes it quite a good example of the Blake Schneider, the big Blake Schneider narrative, the 3-act structure, the way he says it, because it's like you've got the thesis and then you've got the antithesis, and then you've got the synthesis, don't you? So it's like, the thesis is, what if society was super violent, like more violent than what we've got?
It was over the top.
Oh, it was over the top. I mean, Phoenix is like told the authorities to stay out of a section of LA. So, but you can understand that, can't you? Like this perception of LA where they have the ghetto, or they have like, race areas that cops don't go into anymore because of gangs and stuff. That's the perception that you get told through the media. So it's like, he's taken over a section of the city that even the police don't go to anymore. You know, they just don't bother him. Just don't go in there. He's got his own little world going on, you know. But what if in the movie we took that to a whole nother level where it's just this violent, you know, part of society, you know? So, yeah, whereas then the antithesis, of course, is a world where you get fined for swearing. Like, you can't even swear without the swear jar kind of kicking in, you know? And then the synthesis is coming together, isn't it? What he basically says at the end, you kind of need to have a bit of yours toned down and you need to kind of come to the party a bit more and make some decisions and smooth it over. So it's pretty cool that way, isn't it?
So a warning, I was going more the hope direction.
You're being joyful here, so and that's fine.
I say this here, that the warning, the hope being though, the hope I saw was that human nature can change itself. Like, we're not prisoners of one direction. We don't get on a rail and that's it. That's all we've got. We do have choices. Yeah. That was the hope I drew out of this one here, that we do have the capacity as individuals and as a society to alter our behaviour, perceptions, our way of living to be better.
You're being very positive.
That's what I think.
Yeah. So the bit of catch-up news is that, well, we have been celebrities ourselves. Sorry, we've been in the local newspapers.
I haven't been able to move for
can't leave my house without the paparazzi all up in my grill.
Oh, they keep getting photos of us in the paper because we send it to them.
That's right.
You send the photos enough times, and you'll eventually get them in there.
They finally show up. They finally show up at my front door.
I think one of the things is they like the fact that they get the photos that were taken rather professionally, I have to say. They are,
very professionally, very good photographer we hired.
It means that the newspaper doesn't have to pay a photographer to come get some photos and organise stuff. So it's
big time.
But yeah, we're in the paper, we're in the Coastal Times, Perth Now, and Mandurah Mail.
We will be in Mandurah. We're on online Mandurah Mail at the moment and maybe in the paper.
And this was off the back of interviewing Hamad. Oh my God!
Still can't say it. Hamad
al-Sarraf. Sorry, Hamad. Yes.
He's now an avid listener, and we're just going to annoy him too much.
We got the interview, and then we pushed that, and this was also our way of sort of saying thanks to him coming along.
Correct. Yeah.
We generated as much press as we could, and that means local Australian things, which I think that's probably quite important for such a film created in such a distant place and culture.
Big time, yeah.
It's quite important. So we try to help. So, Sylvester Stallone could reach out, for example. We could probably get him a place on Mandurah Mail.
I think we could. He could send us some photos.
I think actually if we got an interview with him, we'd probably get on like the Perth Times or something.
We probably would. We'd probably get that next level. So I think there's no such thing as bad press in this context. So we're bothering them. And it was good to kind of talk about, which you and I have, and we've never mentioned in the show, but talking with the journalists, both Coastal Times and the Mandurah Mail, that, Space Brains is probably long-term vision, maybe to have some sort of conference happening where we do get people like Hamad and other film directors involved, or writers and producers and those kind of people, maybe giving talks to the public about their films and about being a creative artist and about science fiction or, films in general. And I think that would be something that Space Brains could really well and truly be behind.
Oh, it would be amazing if we could get a whole bunch of creatives together thinking about science fiction. Yeah. And, really sort of trying to find a way of inspiring people to create more.
Definitely.
Because I don't think that we can have too much of the imaginative creations of brilliant people. I don't think that's possible to have too much of that, is it?
No, and never too much, and just so then they don't have to just listen to you and me either. They go listen to other.
Let's face it, they don't listen to us. They just turn over to look at our pictures in the paper.
Oh no, they just want the paper. They just want the pictures. Okay, so Demolition Man, as we mentioned, 1993. Marco Brambilla, 3 big writers for this: Daniel Waters, Robert Renee, I know he's done a little bit, and Peter M. Lenkov. These guys are like 90s scriptwriters in Hollywood, aren't they, these dudes? And, of course, I've mentioned good old Sly Stallone. I don't know why my accent always changes. But, I mean, Sylvester Stallone's one of these guys, like, he did action, he did comedy, he did science fiction, and he kind of incorporated and then really heavy drama. Like when you take something like Rocky,
surprisingly enough, even the first Rambo was pretty heavy on the drama as well.
That's drama one, and he's written and directed these things.
For the reputation of Rambo, there's even a Rambo throwback in this movie here.
Yeah, there is, isn't there?
Yeah, Rambo 2 and 3 were just all out sort of action.
Yeah, they just become action, massive things.
But the first, if you're going, if you watch Rambo First Blood and you think it's going to be like this major action fest, I think 3/4 of the movie is, character introspection and looking at society post Vietnam War
and there's a great thing, like you talk about violence. Like Rambo is violent, but I think in the first one it's like one person is shot dead. There's this violent study being done. It's like in the first Rambo, it's like one person dies literally on screen, and it's like in the second one, it's like 300 people. Yeah, and then in the next one, it's like 1,000. Like it's cultural genocide. I think by the time you get to the third or the fourth one.
Oh yeah.
And there's a great couple, if you're really interested in that, YouTube it, because there's a couple of really cool videos. They take snippets from the film. It's like, in the first one it's a gunshot, in the second one he's like mowing people down. So it does change. But like even Rocky, he wrote and directed that. So he's behind it. He's involved in it. He's a script writer. This guy is super talented when it comes to
the story
films.
behind his Rocky movie was really good. I don't know if you've read it. So he moved to New York. So he went and did. Lived between his dad and his mum. They broke up. He was in foster care and stuff. He ended up going to school for dramatic arts. He didn't graduate. Apparently he's having trouble and stuff. So he moved to New York to be an actor. And he got a few sort of bit parts here and there, and nothing too amazing. I kind of want to look up those scenes that mentions he's in these other movies. And then he finally decided to go to California because... Why did you go to New York to be an actor? Maybe a stage actor he's looking at?
Stage, yeah.
So in California, though, he's going screen actor, and he's trying out for bits and pieces, and he had to go at writing, because he went and saw Muhammad Ali fighting Wepner. Can't remember the guy's first name. If you're a boxing fan, you know who I'm talking about.
Hit us up.
And Muhammad Ali lost. And... that really affected Sylvester. He's sitting there going, "Oh my god!" You're like, if this isn't, because he was in a really hard time at the moment. He was living on no money, and he actually had to sell his dog because he couldn't afford. He said he couldn't afford to feed his dog properly, and he didn't want to see his dog, not get fed because he couldn't. So he sold his dog, and had, I think at one point maybe $100 to his name, and that was before he paid any rent and so forth. And he saw this boxing match. He went, look, if this Wepner fellow can rise up and defeat, the heavyweight champion of the world, who is the greatest boxer of all time, this is a fantastic story. And so he wrote Rocky. And while he was trying out for some of the movie, he's basically shopping around. A couple of producers looked at his script and went, "Hey, we like this script. Mm-hmm. We'll give you $360,000 for the script. But you won't be the actor in it." He said, "Well, I want to be the actor." He said, "No, you're not going to be the actor. We're going to get someone like Burt Reynolds," or I nearly said Ryan Reynolds there, which would have been funny. Burt Reynolds or some other guy I've never heard of. He must have been big at the time. And again, Sly, who had just recently sold his dog and had $100, which wasn't enough to cover his bills and his rent coming up. $360,000.
You would think you would take it, wouldn't you?
In today's money.
Yeah.
50 years later, today's money, $360,000.
It's a mortgage.
That's a house.
Yeah.
I was explaining to my little daughter here when I was telling her this story that $360,000 would buy the house I'm living in at the moment, plus my 2 cars, and all the furniture inside of it. Which made me feel a bit sad that that's all I've got. But on the other hand, it's good. But back then, $360,000, that's particularly totally broke dude. But he said, "No." And so he went on and sort of struggled a bit, and he went back and he kept shopping. He kept pushing. Finally, these guys relented and said, "Yes, we'll do your film." And and you can star in it. He sold it for $1 million, which is like obviously 3 times. And again, 1970, $1 million is an absolute crap load of money.
$3 billion or something.
Yeah, if you put inflation on that, it's probably script writing and acting in your first film ever.
Yeah.
And they did the right bet because, of course, that film, it hit number one.
Yeah,
it won the Best Picture Oscar, nominated for 9 Academy Awards, won 3 of them. And, it's the Rocky franchise has gone to earn $1.8 billion US or something crazy, which, again, I was then explaining to my daughter what that was. And I said, so that's 18,000 houses like the one I'm living in now, which Mandurah, I think, has about the inner Mandurah area has maybe 20,000 homes. Yeah. So you could basically buy Mandurah for what Rocky has earned. So it's like, in phenomenal perseverance. Yeah. And Rocky's a really good movie.
It is.
And Stallone has produced and written and acted in a lot of really good movies, like high grossing. He's grossed hundreds of millions, billions of dollars.
Yeah.
So I find that a really inspiring and exciting sort of story. He was he didn't come from screenwriting royalty, or he didn't have acting parents or any connection, but he managed to do it. I don't know how many poor guys who sold their dog and had $100 and then they were broke and they just moved back Midwest somewhere where it was cheaper to live and didn't become a movie star.
Yeah.
But in this case, it worked. And we have Demolition Man today, thankfully.
Yes, and then this one he's obviously been hired as the big actor. I felt like, I didn't look into the background of Demolition Man, but it felt a little bit like he probably signed up because Arnie was doing so much science fiction, I think, at the time.
Well, this was his big comeback. So Stallone had done a few mediocre hits, which is funny because a couple of them I was watched and I think were really good movies.
Mm.
But so he did a couple sort of mediocre stuff after his Rocky and Rambo and a couple of his other ones. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but I can't.
Yeah.
His star was on decline, and then Schwarzenegger had come out with like the Total Recall, and what was the one before that, and Predator, and there was this sort of resurgence of this science fiction sort of action, which wasn't big during the 80s. It was military.
Yeah, it was
action.
all military action. Suddenly we get to the 90s.
It was military and fiction. I suppose crime action maybe a bit with sort of international stuff, and then you got these sort of RoboCop and Predator and Terminator and
Total Recall
or Terminator 2, I should say, which was a huge movie. We'll have to do that one day.
We will. That will be a classic.
And bang. So I think Stallone was going, okay, this is sign me up for this one.
Yes. Good chance to get back in the ring. And look, they bring in some other big sort of actors with this. Obviously, Wesley Snipes. I mean, he's a big 90s actor.
He was massive at the time there. Blade and Passenger 47 and Wildcats.
47 or 57, I think.
47, And
White Men Can't Jump.
White Men Can't Jump.
Yeah.
He was big, and then he had some tax difficulties, which kind of pushed him out of the scene. He had a divorce and some tax difficulties, and I'm not sure what he's doing now, but I'm sure he's enjoying his retirement.
Presume so, maybe. Might be ready for a comeback, actually.
Maybe Wesley would like to come on our show and tell us about what he's doing.
And good old Sandra Bullock, which, of course, this was her on the rise, opposite to those male actors.
Yeah.
This is her kind of...
coming out of Speed.
Speed. And
she done Speed 92.
Yeah, Speed was 92, I'm sure. So it's like, this is another big one, a couple of big blockbusters, and obviously she's gone on and she's been involved in the Oscars, and, she's a megastar now in her own right.
Yeah, she gets... what was that one? Was that Gravity?
Gravity was a good. We should do that actually.
Do Gravity, that'd be fun.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I haven't seen it because it sounds like a film with too many anxiety points in there for me.
It's the whole, without saying any spoilers, it's like being on a roller coaster, that movie. Like it doesn't stop. Like it really doesn't stop. So my wife Tanya never wanted to watch it because that's kind of how people have described it, I think. Or you just said anxiety. Yeah, you're gonna, like, I bite my fingernails anyway. You bite your fingernails for the whole film. Like it just doesn't stop. Like. I think, is it, I'm just trying to think. No, it's not Blake Schneider. Robert McKee, the screenwriting expert, talks about, like, you go from one scene to the next and it's like positive, negative. So the characters are like emotionally positive and then by the end of the scene they're negative, and then the next scene they're negative and they go positive, right? So each scene's like that. That's right. Blake Schneider goes, oh, that might be too complex to actually craft that. But that film, it's kind of like you don't get to do that. It's just the whole way. Like you just don't stop. And it's one of those, I've seen a couple of films like that over time, but yeah, that film, it's almost like you hold your breath for the 90 minutes. Like it's weird. Very clever.
The Martian does that a bit too.
The Martian does that, but there is
the book does it more so because in the book there's a few more obstacles he has to get through.
Yeah,
and in that the story was like it would always be, oh, I've got a plan. I'm going to do this, and he starts off in that, and it seems to be okay. Something little seemingly will happen initially, but it won't be a problem. Okay, I can handle that. Something big happens, and then that little thing. After the big thing, suddenly turns out it actually is a bad thing. You know, like that little leak that he had earlier, which was he calculated, no, it's not going to be a problem. And then he smashes his spacesuit a bit, and then suddenly now the leak is, now this is,
But, anyway. but there's sort of wins in that film, isn't there, for him? Like, so you sort of take a breath and you kind of go with it a little bit, I think. Yeah. But in Gravity, you hold your breath. But we should do it. That's one we can add to the list. It's not really a classic. It's just not. Well, I mentioned Benjamin Bratt. He plays the kind of the feminine partner, Garcia. I mean, he's one of these guys that's like in so many films, isn't he? Never probably the lead so much, but so many big Hollywood films where he's just always that B1. And then, of course, Dennis Leary is in this, the great comedian. I was going to say Dennis Leary. But it's like, I didn't know this until this viewing. I don't know if you had the same experience because I've not seen Demolition Man probably for 20 years. But you listen to what Dennis Leary says in this film, and it's like from the song Arsehole, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like, and I thought, did they just hire him and say, we just want you to be doing your song, but you're just going to do it?
That's his stand-up routine. Is do this whole I want to be smoking fat cigar, sitting on John F. Kennedy's grave. Because he does that in stand-up,
right? I watched him once, and he smokes and he drinks in the stand-up. Yeah. Like, not just doing the arsehole song, but actually he stands there with a cigarette and a whiskey. Like, he's like, Americans. But it really felt like when he had his... he's in the film a little bit, but actually when he had these dialogue, it was like it was from the song Arsehole. Yeah. It was like, literally, I think he quoted it a couple of times.
I'm pretty sure that someone just basically went... that they were looking for the rebel leader who is... just interested in freedom, personal freedom. And they went, well, Dennis Leary was kind of popular at the time. He's a director, writer, actor.
He's done his own stuff.
He's done a whole bunch of stuff. And
comedian, obviously.
I think that he managed to get in there and he was a bit popular at the time and they went, bring him in.
Let's just do it. So let's get into that narrative, Surrey. So we've mentioned that at the start, it's Los Angeles, 1996.
And I found that a redundant thing saying, because you come flying in the very opening scene, you're flying in over the Hollywood Hills with a Hollywood sign on fire.
On fire, yeah.
Which and then it says Los Angeles. You go, really? There wasn't Hollywood in, New York?
But anyway, they spell it out. Sorry, they spell it out. But we have this epic opening shot, don't we? We come in on the Hollywood sign on fire, which it has been burnt out in reality, hasn't it? Back in the 70s or something. It got burnt down once and it got burned out. But it was so cool. Like, we're coming in, helicopter shot over the top of that, and then there's all this destruction. And to me, it did connect to the LA riots. So I don't know how close this film came out after it or before it, but it felt like there was the images of LA riots in this film. But I'm not sure about that, and I could be wrong. So correct me.
I think it was definitely flavoured by that.
Yeah, it was and because we had this kind of construction and we had destruction.
At the time, there were a number of movies that showed this same thing.
Like cities being destroyed.
Predator 2 was set in Los Angeles. With massive gang fights accelerated and advanced, to the point where they're using machine guns and they've got fortified emplacement.
And look, recently I heard Drew Carey talk about. He spent a lot of his career, LA before he became big, similar to what you actually saying with Rocky. Like, he didn't have any money, he was living off the. He said he had a great story that you could go to the casino and he didn't bet money, didn't bet his money, but it was an all-you-could-eat buffet for $1.50.
Holy moly!
So on the weekend, so
that's how he got big.
Yeah.
Boom.
But no, there's just he'd be like, Friday I'd have $10 and I had to pay the rent on Monday, which I don't have the money for. So every Monday I'd be saying to the landlord, you've got to advance me, give me a week, I'll get advancement on his really shitty job, pay This is before he got into television, and because he came to comedy late, like in his 30s. And so at this point in his late 20s, he's sort of really unsure what he's doing. But he's like, I'd have $10 on a Friday night to make it till payday on Monday, which I was asking for a check in advance so I could pay my rent. And the best thing I could do was go to the casino and get the lunch for $1.50, which was all you could eat. And I would just stuff myself and then walk away, and that would be my meal for the whole day. And he's like, for $1.50, and he'd be like, Friday night, I'm working out in my mind, it's $1.50 on Saturday, $1.50 on Sunday, that's $3. I've got $7 left. I've got to buy milk. I've got to buy, like it'd just be exact. I've got to put $2 in the car worth of petrol. Like just exactly working out how to spend that $10. But the reason why I say that, he spoke about around the LA riots and before and afterwards, like driving in, like as a white man, getting to the lights and just being going, am I like going to get dragged out of my car right now? Like he's like, there's violence on the street, like everywhere you look. So it did make me think about, when I watched this again the other day, that's kind of like, were the writers and that thinking of that when they wrote this film, or when they or when it did go into production and film, they're like, in LA that's just ripped apart.
It's still a very relevant movie now. We've got more recently the Black Lives Matters movement, which is thrown up a whole lot of I suppose societal chaos and people trying to figure out how things are supposed to be, and you got people going super aggressive on it, super passive on it, and at the same time you've got this push. There's a strong push towards like no physical contact, because of COVID, but also no physical contact for not invading people's space without permission. Veganism has never been larger. There's this like
we've got a lot of this contrast.
It's almost like we're moving
conflict.
In 12 years, we'll be at the year that they're in, and you could almost imagine now, 12 years. Like imagine if COVID goes on for a bit longer. People are going to stop high-fiving and handshaking. Maybe there will be these weird sort of
wave high five,
waving near each other, and meat will be banned. I don't know.
So the film is like this extremity of violence, but you're right. Maybe society does just go down that because of other things like a pandemic. Anyway, so we go from that to we're inside the LAPD helicopter. I love that in these big action films. The police have helicopters, they have machine guns, they have everything. Maybe they do in the States.
They do. They got tanks.
They got tanks.
They got APCs and all sorts.
And in here we have the helicopter pilots are kind of discussing like how it's all destroyed. And I think one of them says, I didn't quite get it, but it was like, I don't know why we bother with this city. Like, I don't know why we bother.
Do you remember when they used to fly passenger aircraft through here?
Yeah. So it's kind of like it's so... it's so destroyed and violent that like, what are we even doing, And this is where Stallone like emerges out of the back of the
This is one of those hero scenes. This is what are we even doing here? You said to do a good deed. So I can't do Stallone, sorry.
I know. And then like he does talk to them a little bit about that and reflect on what's going on. And then he says this great line of "Send a maniac to catch one, Phoenix." And he's like yells Phoenix as he like jumps out of the helicopter
on a
towards this massive building that's surrounded by police. Obviously, none of the police have gone in. It's going to be up to Stallone.
He bungees off and he disconnects. He goes,
he just starts killing people.
Shoots a whole bunch of guys, and
he's killing
maybe one dude or two dudes, and disconnects himself and then charges on into this factory. We get a nice little cutaway, and movies like to do this, and I really do like this style where you've got the gun shooting and the flashing lights, and then it's sort of all quiet. And we don't see Phoenix, we just see like his hand and I suppose his right butt cheek as he walks past these barrels and stabs the knife. He picks up that knife with a big skull header. I'm surprised we didn't see that come back.
Yeah, it's true.
It would have been great in the museum of guns and stuff if he found like...
He's like, my knife.
But it didn't make a comeback. So he stabs it into the petrol barrels.
It starts pouring gasoline everywhere.
Nice little quiet bit. And then we cut back to Stallone just ripping his way through a whole gang's worth of...
Yeah, all these henchmen, the classic, like, take out all the henchmen, isn't it? It's like all the bad guys just get blown apart. And so then Spartan or John confronts Phoenix. And they have that good old classic, it's a homage to the Western, that they're kind of like, they have that standoff, the eyes, they sum up each other, don't they? Like, it's like they realise that they are the powerful ones,
Yeah, I think that the difference here is often the henchmen have only the motivation of get him.
Yes.
And so there's no calculation has to be done. It's just henchmen, bad guy, okay, that's it. We just dispatch with one another, and the good guy will dispatch with the henchman. Meet the big bad guy, and it's like, okay, what is his move? Because he's not just charging me. What is he set up? What's the deal here?
And like you said, Phoenix, we've seen Phoenix in the previous scene just sort of stab these gasoline barrels, and he's standing in it, and he lights a cigarette. And John kind of is, standing there. They're yelling about the hostages. Where are the hostages? And Phoenix is saying, I don't care about I never cared about the hostages. They're not here. Who cares? And with that, he flicks his cigarette down so it lights up. And
although Mythbusters did show that it doesn't happen.
No, it's a movie.
Yeah, I know.
Mythbusters. Don't believe that. That's a conspiracy. Sorry, that is a conspiracy.
False news.
It's false.
Fake news.
I'm following the conspiracy theorists.
The Russian trolls.
Yes, I believe in Hollywood films. Right. This was my childhood. This kind of movie. It taught me a lot.
Everyone knows that in a movie, you flick a cigarette down, it lights
up. It lights up. But the thing was also what's good about that is it shows that Phoenix, Wesley Snipes, he's a maniac, isn't he?
Crazy.
Like he's lighting up all this petrol, which we've been told in movies previously, Surrey, not Mythbusters at this point in time in my life.
No, this is 93. They did.
Yeah, they didn't exist. In this point in time, if someone like Wesley Snipes throws a cigarette in petrol, it's going to just blow, right? Yeah. So he's crazy, and he's like laughing about it. And Stallone, that's not enough to stop Stallone. No, is it? He just runs through the flames. Phoenix. He loves saying that in this movie, which I quite like.
Well, it's a great name, isn't it?
It is.
Phoenix
it's a really
rises
good name.
from the fire.
Rises from the flames. Yeah. Symbolism.
And then he says, what was he saying? Phew, is it cold in here? Is it just me? Yeah. And then the fire goes up. Important because that comes back as to haunt him.
They do. This whole scene, actually, it's a good example of this. The scene is the same at the start and the end,
Yeah.
So we'll come back to that. We've already given you the spoiler warning. But he said they tackle, they fight, they have a good old-fashioned fisticuffs, which is what you want from Stallone. Of course, we know, as you were just talking about Rocky, we know he throws a punch. Phoenix throws a few punches. He throws a few punches. I think Phoenix is thrown over a desk and knocked out. And this is a good moment. Save the cat, sorry, because what does he do? He doesn't leave him there. He picks him up on the shoulders, runs out of the building on fire, and just as he gets, which is classic, 80s, 90s action, boom. As he's exiting,
except
right?
better than that, the whole building goes up and collapses. And they got it was an actual demolition site at the time, and it's not done enough in films. They try to. I think Hollywood directors, whenever they hear there's a big building being demolished, I think they all just try and can we film? I think they should just film it.
They should,
even if they don't have a movie for it yet. Just get
Stallone running out of it.
Put in some pyrotechnics to come flying out of it. Just get it done up so you've got the footage.
But don't you love that? That was such a thing of 80s and 90s. Each action film with Stallone and Sylvester and then other people like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Schwarzenegger. Sorry, what did I say? Stallone and Sylvester, the same guy. How in those action movies they kind of kept, and Bruce Willis would be the next one. It's they kind of kept up in the ante. So it's in one film he jumps out of a helicopter that blows up. Okay, in this next film he's walking out of a factory that just totally blows up. Oh yeah, well in this next one he's walking out of a building that's actually collapsing. How are you going to do that? We know a guy that's demolishing a building. We're going to have him there. He'll walk out. Bam. It's and then in the next one they're we can't actually top that anymore.
Yeah,
what can we do? And then someone's like, dinosaurs. Yeah. Bloody Spielberg.
Yeah.
Spielberg. That's right. So he explodes. And the thing here is that we're told there's a great moment here that they're like, what about the hostages? The chief says. And he's like, no, there's no hostages. Phoenix lied about them. And Phoenix like, no, he told me that he didn't care. It was like an older brother dobbing on a younger brother. I thought about my two boys. Like, it's like, no, he told me he didn't like the Lego. It's like, and they sort of have that moment. And then which I distinctly remember this when I saw this film as a kid, that it shocked me to the core, Surrey, that then when that fireman says, there's bodies everywhere. And it's like, no, but Stallone's a good guy. Like, it really... Like, I remember... Because we don't see that in other films.
Well, he said he did a thermo check.
He did a thermo check and there was no body.
Because if they were already dead, they would be cold. But we don't know that. No. We're just going like, I know, I did a thermo check, there was only the 8... And you're like... I remember also when he comes out, there's a bus there and you think, oh, he must
Because they always save them, right? They always save them.
The bad guy, Snipes, must have, that's what the explosion was all about, was to...
Kill him,
To mean then that if you're taking me out,
I'm taking you out.
You're taking everything out too.
Of course, like you get that now, but I remember at the time, because I was probably about 12 or 13 when I saw this at the movies, and just that was a shock point to me. And I think that was the thing. Like you were so used to Stallone and Bruce Willis and Schwarzenegger and whoever, Chuck Norris, saving the day. The people not dying. They would find them at the back. Oh, they had them at the back. Whereas, like, no, they're all dead. It's like, oh, God, like, this is a bit bleak.
But it's good because it does set up the reason for him going into this prison.
Cryo station, yeah.
Yeah, so he goes, they've got the prison there. So he gets, it's a very quick
montage,
judgment. It doesn't really go through the court trial.
No.
Just then it has him in that sort of weird plasticky...
Which is good because...
Sex suit. I assume it's something of a sex suit.
Well, he strips off naked, doesn't he? And the assistant warden, which is a nice touch, is like... He's telling him all the sentencing that he's been for killing, for being part of the murder of these hostages. It's going to be 13 years, and then part of the murder of this other hostage. And he kept saying, "Skip it, skip it, skip it, skip it."
Like
so it's a great montage because like he's kind of pissed off and he's shitty because he tried to save the day and yet it didn't work out, and he's been stripped off, and we're getting a lot of the science part told to us really quickly because we don't want the science. Sorry, we just want to get to the bit.
It's going to be frozen.
Yeah, but I paused it here, and this to me, for anyone that wants to be...
if you can see his nut bag.
No.
Well, because
I did that as well.
Almost can.
You can see his ass, can't you? You see his ass, you see his legs, you see a fair bit, right?
So for anyone interested in sort of wet... glistening muscles and nutbags
of the 90s.
You might almost get shot. And I got to say,
freeze frame it.
He was just about 50 when he did this film.
Yeah.
Getting on there. He was a little bit older than I am now.
Still looked pretty bloody good.
And he was buff as.
He was buff. But what I was going to say is not pause it, I was skipping that bit actually. So, no, what I mean is I paused it because as a script writer, this is an amazing beat because it's like 7.5 minutes. So all of that stuff we have just rattled off, the hostages, the flaming Hollywood signs, the explosion, the saving the day, the fight, had all happened in 7.5 minutes.
Took us 30 minutes to get to it.
I know. We just spoke about it for 30 minutes.
That's good. But that is something I noticed also with, what was the previous one? Total Recall.
Yeah.
Is it's just...
They just bam it out.
This is just the early 90s. Man, they're just like... They don't use this style of cutting and action.
Well, to me, it's just story writing. Like they just get to it. They get to that moment.
So bang in your face. Like it just happens and it's all wham.
Yeah, I annoy my wife because quite often I'm like, ugh. She's like, when we're watching a movie, because then she's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "It feels like we've been watching this for quite some time now." And she's like, and I'll like go pause and I'm like, "It's 14 minutes and I still don't really get what the fuck's going on."
Yeah, there's no story.
And she's like, "Oh, the promise of the premise." Then I'm like, yeah, but this is the thing. Watch Demolition Man. At 7 minutes, you know everything, don't you? You pretty much know everything that's expected. So we should keep moving anyway.
Yes.
Because this will go on for 7 hours. So then we jump and it's 2032. And we get a Huxley on the phone in her little self-driving vehicle, talking to the warden.
And we're seeing there's a beautiful, as it goes...
A beautiful futuristic...
It says San Angeles.
That's it, San Angeles.
San Angeles, and it's beautiful, almost Star Trek style. There's greenery and just this nice sort of white crystalline buildings jutting up here and there, but certainly a big contrast to...
Yeah, And it's nice because she's talking to the warden, who's the same guy that was the assistant warden that put Sylvester Stallone in the cryo station, but now he's an old man and he is the warden. And she says, there's a nice line there that I wrote down because she's checking on the ice cubes, and he says, she says, don't you think we should, keep a check on it all? And he says, no. But you're young and you can think about things, which I just kind of liked that. I liked that premise. Like, so in this future, it's like, we don't really think things through. We just kind of do
It's also safe and
automated,
and ordered,
And she drives through this sophisticated city. She's a police officer. And she then takes over the self-driving, which you get the impression pretty quickly, I think, that no one really does that. So it's giving us a little character trait about Huxley. And she asks if there's a police presence is needed to the AI, the computer system. None. So there's nothing going on. And we see then I think it's the police building, this weird little electronic machine pops out of the manicured grass, graffiti sprays over the top of the sign.
Life is hell?
Life is hell. But then automatically the sign kind of like juts out these metal things and just cleans it off.
Yeah, a little zap.
Zaps it off.
And then the graffiti box self-destructs.
Yeah, it does.
She gets into the offices and greets all the people, which is quite fun because they do this sort of weird high five without touching. And they're using sort of almost language that you hear from 1984, I hope you have a joy day. And, they're using all these sort of non-judgmental, neutral terms for everything, which, as I said, it's quite relevant for today. You go on a Twitter, and if you say anything that sounds a little bit kind of harsh or 1990s style, you can expect to get written over the top of by 1,000 people telling you how that you are, being aggressive or you're being uncaring. There was an article saying that, and this is about podcasts that refused to. It was Gimlet Media is being sued by the American Disabled Society, Deaf Society, saying that they're not providing transcripts of their podcasts. Right. And so they're going to be sued for that because deaf people want to hear podcasts too. And I've got nothing wrong with that. But it's the same sort of thing where it's like, to me, it feels, okay, podcasts are inherently audio. Yes, it's really cool to provide transcripts for any number of reasons. But to say that someone is financially obligated for a free artistic production, then it's just that sort of weird.
It becomes so politically correct, doesn't it?
It is a test case. It's, particularly in America, they like to have these test cases where someone will just try it on and say, how does this law work out? How do we classify things? But it has that feeling of, in this future, that's all gone through. And now if you're going to do a podcast, you had better do that. And if you're going to do a video show, you better have verbal description of it. Yeah. Which sounds really cool. Have you heard the X-Files?
I have heard the verbal description.
The verbal description, it's like, how cool would that be to not watch the show and just listen to the verbal description? Yeah. It'd be like an audio drama.
It would be.
Listen to the show with the audio. Anyway, I'm getting off track here, but it is this world where she greets everyone using the sort of language and sort of non-contact, and she comes in and says, any action, anything going on, and I think the chief says, there was an unauthorized, I can't remember the terms he uses, but basically spray painting.
Yes.
And she says, really? Do you need police presence required? Oh, no, it's self-clean. The self-cleaning book will clean itself. It's fine.
That's right.
She's
really disappointed. And we do in that have a periscope come out of that lawn, and it is Dennis Leary's character. And it's just an introduction, like he's looking through it and he's got a lot of shabby people around him. Huxley enters her office and it's full of 90s stuff, including Lethal Weapon.
Red Hot Chili
Peppers. And Garcia, who's, as I mentioned earlier, the sort of side police officer, he actually asks her why she's into all this. And she replies that, don't you just want some action? And it's a great cut because she says that and it goes straight to
don't you want something to
Phoenix coming out of...
Except Garcia does say, no, and then it cuts.
That's right. So
I have to agree with Garcia here. You don't really want the action.
It's a great sort of premise, isn't it? Because here you have a character that's like into the 90s action theoretically and like, don't you just want something to happen? And it's just a great cut to Phoenix being like
for parole.
defrosted. He's up for parole. Seems bizarre that they would defrost them just to say you're going back in the eyes. But that's what this scene is about. And the warden confronts Phoenix and suddenly he speaks Spanish back to him. And you can see he's a bit confused by it because it's kind of almost like he's practicing Spanish. And the warden is going to send him back in. Like, there's no doubt he's been a violent murderer. And he says the word teddy bear and all the locks come undone to the chair he was sitting in. And he just brutally kills the two guards. And he rips the eye out of the warden, which is great 90s sci-fi, isn't it? It's like, we're going to have everything done with eye detection. This is done in a couple of movies. I'm not sure if this movie is the first movie that does it, but I've seen this scene a couple of times. You don't ever see them ripping it out. This scene does it really good. Like he says, let's just, I think Phoenix says to him, let's just do this the easy way. And he kind of like leans towards his eye. And then the next thing you know, it's like, I think it zooms into his eye and then he's holding the eye on a pen, you know? And it allows him to exit the jail. And then what is really great from this, which I loved even as a kid and I loved at this time, is we cut back to the police station because suddenly the computer system is bringing up this warning of 187.
Code 187.
Code 187. It's like got that repetitive like beeping noise going on.
This was a retired code.
Yes, a retired code.
The last time this was seen was 11 years ago.
Yeah.
So 2021.
And it's great as an audience because you kind of like, you know what's happened, but this is really confusing for the police and everything.
Well,
and
it's one of those situations where the audience is sort of in on it.
Yeah.
And like watching the characters knowing
what's
like
about to happen.
When you're watching those candid camera shows where there's like a gag has been set up and the audience knows what the gag's going to be. It's just a matter of watching to see how the participants react. And so here we are going, ooh, how are these sort of rather pampered and soft police officers going to react to what is this 187? And they look it up and it comes back as 187 murder death kill. Murder death. I don't know. I haven't bothered to look up if that's a real thing or not, murder death kill, but it was very good. There's murder death kill, 3 murder death kill. Yeah. And then they zoom in on the to where it's happened at the police station, at the
cryo-prison.
And then it's at petrol station. The ice cube factory. And there's the 2 guards and then there's the warden crawling there and there's quick, send help immediately. Yeah. And then it flatlines. Yeah. And says
they're all shocked.
Another code 187. 3187.
So we're very clearly told 187 is murder death kill. But there's a nice moment there with all the police and Huxley especially because that's what I mean. That previous scene of her saying, "Don't you just want some action?" Well, here is some brutal action, and suddenly she's a bit shocked by it. So they're all shocked. But even she is taken back by the sheer violence of it.
Then they get their next murder death kill out in the car park.
Yeah.
But luckily, I think Huxley recovers sooner and she starts throwing commands at the computer saying, where's the car?
Where's the car?
Of the warden? It's missing. Okay, track it, locate it. And then
the computer tracks it.
Located it, and everyone in the room goes, okay. Send, what was it? Protect and serve.
Yes. And they're all sort of happy. And with that...
They think, well, that's it now.
Yeah, that's it. We're done. Chief, I'm sure Chief says, "Oh, well done, everyone. Good work." Yeah. And in that they look up, well, who was being cryogenically released or parole kind of thing. And there's the older police officer. Like there's a list of names, and the older police officer says, Simon Phoenix. It's Simon Phoenix. He knows him. So we kind of, there's a connection straight away.
Yeah, that old guy actor. How many movies he's been in?
Oh, he's been in heaps.
He was in Driver as the grandfather, the older
just the old man,
the old man that was looked after by baby.
Yeah.
But I swear he's been in a lot of films. That same sort of character.
Yes. He always plays the old black man.
He's the what do they call it in the tropes is the black mystic.
Yes, the black mystic.
Yeah, like it's sort of one of these racial stereotypes. Is that you're going to have the wise person is going to be like some old black man or old black woman for some reason.
It is. So anyway, so they've tracked it, and so now we see Phoenix. He's getting out of this car that he'd stolen. It's in downtown.
And
it's part of this.
He's wearing
overalls.
He's wearing this bright orange thing.
Yeah.
Like it's a very, I don't know, it was almost an 80s throwback.
It was.
And this is 93 that the film was made in, and he was from 96, but still that bright orange and the overalls, was that like New Kids on the Block?
I think it
was kind of...
It was dating back a bit, but...
They tended to have that.
They went for it. I don't know. It's bizarre, isn't it?
But I guess it matched him because he was a crazy man.
Yeah, he's crazy. And he gets out of the car and he goes up to this, which is quite funny because obviously society didn't go down this path. We all walk around with little phone computers. Yeah, but he basically goes up to this computer phone booth. It's like a good old phone booth, but it's a computer now, which makes a lot of sense when you future think without thinking about it. And he basically like Googles, like he really does. He sort of search engines. And he notices that he can type really fast. Like he can type and he's looking at things.
Knows all this
he
stuff.
sort of seems to know all this stuff. And he does. I can't remember what the comment is, but he even comments on himself. Like he's like, oh, well, I don't know what this stuff is, but this is really good. And he actually, who he Googles is someone called Fred Egner, which then we see a picture of Fred Egner and it's Dennis Leary.
Fred Egner?
Egner, yeah.
I thought it was Friendly.
Was it?
Ed Friendly.
Mainly. Maybe I just wrote that down wrong because it is Egner. Yeah, what have we got?
Is the name Ed Friendly?
Egner Friendly, yes, sorry, you are right. So I've written down Fred. Sorry, yeah, Egner Friendly.
And he gets a voice in his head that says,
he does.
Don't you have a job to do? Kill him.
Kill him, yeah. And he's kind of confused by it. And this is when the police roll up. And it's quite a funny scene, this scene, I think, because it shows the, like, how much society has changed from that super violent society. And so we have, like, I think it's 4 cops, or was it 6?
There's 6 of them, yes.
So 6 of them roll up, and the main one gets out and he's got this, like a little tablet thing, and he refers to it, approach...
the maniac.
The maniac.
I love the way they just use the term maniac.
This movie is just all about maniac. And this computer, like, sets him through it, like, asks the maniac to lie on the ground and surrender and all that.
With a forceful voice.
Yeah, with a forceful voice.
His hands behind his back.
Yeah, and then he doesn't do it, and he doesn't do it. He just kind of laughs it off. And so the cop asks the machine to do it, and I think the machine tells him, say do it or else.
Step forward and say it again in a more affirmative tone, a firm tone.
But it's the or else, because then he says it, and Phoenix is kind of laughing them off as you expect. But when he says or else, it's like the good old Marty McFly connection, isn't it? Because it's kind of like, you're calling me chicken? You calling me chicken?
Or else what exactly?
Yeah, what is that? So then he just attacks the cops, and literally these cops just go down left, right, and centre, and they run away from him. Like he's way too violent.
They don't even really fight against him.
No, they don't fight. They can't fight. They don't have guns. This is also what we're learning. They don't actually have guns.
What we do notice here is that old Phoenix is doing some cool ass Wesley Snipes martial arts because when he was fighting John Spartan in the first thing, he was just getting owned by John. Like, he was sort of trying bits and bits, just fighting, being punched up.
Yeah, whereas now he can
Whereas this one here with these guys, he's doing these side kicks. And if you've ever seen Snipes in his action roles, he's a martial artist.
That's right.
Or at least he can act martial arts very well. I don't know if he really does martial arts or not. You could assume he must have studied somewhat, but I know there are pure martial artists out there who would go, no, these guys can't do it at all. I'm not going to argue with you. And he looked really good doing it. He did.
He suddenly looked really slick and everything. And he takes them all out, smashes one of the cars. And all the other cops, like Huxley, are watching this just baffled, aren't they? And there's another murder, death, kill, I think, in there. The cop that goes up against the wall and he turns on the anti-graffiti thing. And they're watching this through this CCT. And then he blows up even a cop car. And that's the thing, like all the police are like, horrified because
I think one of them, Garcia, even asked, "Why would he do that?"
Yeah, he does. Why do you do that? And then anyway, he runs off, and we cut to the Dr. Raymond Cocteau, who's the leader, and he's talking to these other chairs that are rotating in this ballroom,
faces on
basically through Zoom as well.
Yeah,
through a version of Zoom.
It's funny, this future vision, because this is in '93. I remember seeing that sort of system, like with the little telepresence thingos
on chairs.
Yeah, back in there was one of these Beyond 2000 type shows where they're talking about what's going to be in the future. But the funny thing, of course, is we don't I don't know why anyone would think that would be the future.
Yeah.
Because that's not how we work. We've never developed technology in that way. We've taken what we already have and make it better. So what we really do, I've been doing teleconferencing since, for work for years.
Yeah.
And we just have a TV on the wall and a camera above the TV, and it just captures a picture of the whole room.
Yeah.
And so they're sitting in another room looking at a TV, and we're looking at a TV. This whole idea of spending all this money on these expensive little rotating head things, which I don't know, it seems a bit awkward, but it is good they foresaw that that's what you're going to do. You're not going to have real people on the chairs. Yeah. That's
So he's talking about this taking out the terrorists, and he's talking about Egner friendly, and so with these other kind of boardroom people that he's going to take care of it, whatever. So we get the impression that this guy has some controlling power over the city, and he's something. So it's an introduction to him. We then cut back to the Huxley and that in the police station, and they say. Huxley's asking, well, how was Phoenix taken down? How is this violent man really taken down? And this, to me, was freaking hilarious. I don't even know if I thought this was hilarious as a kid, but this was so funny. And the answer is John Spartan. And they look at video footage of John Spartan.
Also, they said John Spartan, 1,000 confirmed arrests in 3 years.
Yeah.
So you do the math on it, it's three a day.
3 a day, yeah.
Which would have meant he must have, I reckon he must have just caught carloads of people at a time. People,
yeah. Which is what we, at the start, I mean, look how many people he kills, all the henchmen. So, yeah.
Are they arrests?
So it's not 3 a day, it's that in one day, takes out 80 of them. Yeah. But this is just the funniest bit of video footage to me. It's he's walking away from a burning building with this carrying this little girl, and a journalist says to him, how can you justify taking down a $7 million complex for a girl with a $25,000 ransom? And he looks around shocked at the journalist, but the girl says, fuck you, lady.
That's great.
Which is what he was thinking, but it was just so cool that they said that to the girl, So it showed that he is the hero, it doesn't matter about destruction, and he's the Demolition Man. This
is a similar thing from...
that is 90s as well.
Dirty Harry. We'll go back to the 70s when... Dirty Harry's been chewed out by the police commissioner and said, how you shot that guy, the other day dead, while you're on the things. And in your report you said, you thought he was going to rape or rape the woman. Yeah, how would you know what was going through his mind? And Dirty Harry just looks at him and sneers and says, well, when he was naked carrying a knife in an erection, I just guessed. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of deal here.
Same sort of line, yeah.
It makes you feel, it's a save the cat moment where you sort of go, fuck you, lady. How do you put that sort of dollar value of a person over top of blowing up some buildings? I mean, you can rebuild the building.
That's right.
But so we get that we're on his side now. We can't help it.
So they have this debate, and there's a good line as well where they say, well, Phoenix, I think the old man says that. He says, Phoenix is an old-fashioned criminal. We need an old-fashioned cop, So they defrost Spartan. They bring him back. Huxley informs him pretty quickly that his wife did pass away, and actually then...
In the earthquake.
And Chief is really aggro suddenly at Spartan. He says, look, we didn't bring you back to go back down memory lane. We brought you back to take out Phoenix, and we're going to reinstate you. But if you don't behave, you're going straight back to the frozen status. So it's a good sort of setup, isn't it? That our character he's been granted freedom as long as he's going after Phoenix.
And it does, tie off that whole looking for family and old connections, which would be the natural first step.
Well, that's what you think, wouldn't you? Yeah.
But here they sort of go, well, the movie's not about that.
No,
that would be a good movie in its own right, wouldn't it? And you've sort of got those movies with those, what's that one where Mel Gibson wakes up from the cryo thing?
Yeah, what is that one?
And is it Forever Young or something?
Forever Young, yeah. I think
something. So you've got other movies that explore that. This is not exploring. This is exploring a crazy ass maniac cop with a crazy ass maniac.
Just in a minute, yeah. Anyway, and then very quickly, you know, he's kind of introduced to the world and the city, and then he goes to the toilet and he comes out and he's like, "You're out of toilet paper. There's three seashells in there," and they all kind of laugh and stuff about that. And he's like, and it's the same as us. And I remember as a kid going, 3 seashells. What the, you know, like it's
my
such
wife
an
had never
interesting...
seen this movie,
Yeah.
and yet by the second or third mention of the 3 seashells, she's like, I really want to know what this 3 seashells is.
It was something that I remember as a kid really going, yeah, well, how does it work? And then so what he does is, because he swears, and of course there is this swear machine that when you swear, it spits out parking ticket, you know, fines, tickets. And he just goes up to it and like swears into it deliberately, and then goes, "So much for your seashells." So he's just created toilet paper. Huxley tells him about also the hand sensor, that he's got a microchip. They've all got microchips in their hand to know where they are. So good old GPS
That's
locator.
how you buy stuff.
That's how you buy stuff.
How you do everything.
Yeah, but Phoenix doesn't have one.
No.
So they're trying to figure out what would Phoenix be up to, and Spartan says, "Well, guns. You know, where do you get guns?"
I mean, first of all, they said, "Well, we've asked the computer."
Yeah.
And the computer says he's going to set up a meth lab and then get a gang. And Spartan says, "Well, you think he's going to set up? He's been defrosted now to set up business?"
Yeah.
Which I have to also agree would be like, no.
But anyway, so he's like going for a gun. Where do you get a gun in this city? And of course, it's a museum. And this film does this a few times. It cuts from that, and he's walking into the museum. Like, so it's a nice. They keep telling you what's about to happen, kind of thing. And so he goes into the museum and he's wandering around, and everyone's, you know, all polite and as they do. And he goes, so it's lovely, isn't it? Like he walks down, it's like the Hall of Violence,
Yes.
which is really cool.
And shots of basically his history.
Yeah, it's just of what we came from at the start of the film. And he walks over, which is a really nice little homage, like walks over this floor that's made of glass, and you can see down, and it's like downtown 90s LA.
An actual dig site. Because as we learned in 2011 was the big one.
Yeah.
Which basically, as far as I can tell, was a massive apocalyptic earthquake, which basically sucked LA or the greater LA area in underground, like just
wiped it out. Yeah,
which I think was the catalyst for their change.
Their new society.
This is where Cocteau came out and updated their society, and I guess you sort of need something along those lines, like a big
cataclysmic
COVID incident, you know, for example, to affect change, you know, something to really shake things up.
Yep.
And she even mentions actually a few later on. She talks about several pandemics that happened as well. So it's quite a relevant movie even today. Like people watching this today would not be going, "Oh, they hilariously got it all wrong and it's all outdated," because eerily enough, it sort of mimics what has really come to happen in a number of ways.
Sure does.
So yeah, he walks down over the glass and quite humorously, and I laughed a fair bit at this when we get the scene of some people looking in the museum, and there's a guy there, and he just brutally slams his head against the glass, and then he falls over. I pissed myself laughing.
And there's a couple of moments like when he does this a couple of times in Phoenix in the movie. He does it. Everyone else is really nice, and they all just kind of like politely walk away really quickly. I'm getting out of here because I don't know what the hell this guy is up to. He's a maniac.
I've got to say, if I saw some dude with weirdo bleached hair and an orange top and overalls, and he just grinning to himself, slamming someone's head into a glass wall, I would probably just go, that's
to move on.
That's not the sort of environment that I'm used to. If this were a computer game, different story, but in real life, too much.
So Huxley and that floor it down there. They're heading down.
They put on the oldies station.
And they put on the oldie stations to make him feel more comfortable. And the oldie station is ads from the 90s.
Jingles. Oh my God.
You know, so they joke about Armour hot dogs. Phoenix starts breaking into the gun closet. But there's a great moment, like he gets a gun, and then that's why he's trying to break in, and this man comes, he's, "Excuse me, sir, can I help you?" And he's like, "Yeah, how much do you weigh?" And he like just picks him up and throws him through. And he gets all these awesome old guns, and then he has a moment of clarity where he goes, "Hang on, this is the future. Where's the like sci-fi guns? Where's the laser guns?" And he gets this magnetic accelerator gun, which and then he's trying to like follow the instructions on how to work.
Actually, an HKG 11 4.7mm caseless round.
I know you would know what it is.
Experimental rifle from Germany.
I thought it was being high tech by saying magnetic accelerator gun, but okay.
But it was they just used the shape of the gun. It's really
he is right, but like where in the future would there be a better gun? But then again, I did think.
It's only 12 years.
It's only 12 years later. Yeah, it's not that much later, and then it's supposed to be more of a peaceful society.
Well, the thing is that in reality, we're using the same gun technology that they used in World War One, by and large. We've made the machining more precise. Everything's a little bit cleaner and neater, a bit more efficient. But essentially, you go out and buy the most modern gun now. It is,
still
identical in all of its main operating parts to something that was turn of the 19th century.
So Spartan confronts Phoenix, and there's a good old-fashioned gun shootout, which that allows Spartan to also get a gun. That starts in the wall of violence, and it goes into that 90s replica scene, so they fall in there. And this is where Spartan's also realising Phoenix does seem to be suddenly a much better fighter, he's overcoming him.
Spartan's now getting bashed up, because at the start, he overcame Phoenix quite easily. Like, it was almost, funny how easy it was.
Yeah. So, which maybe, again, it's that old thing, like, the cop's the better fighter, but he's more of a maniac, so hard to predict, what he's going to do, whereas now he's a great fighter as well.
And he's a lot stronger.
He
seems to be smarter in the way he uses things.
So they have this good old fight in the 90s scene, the water flows, they knock over the hydrant, they smash a car. As I said, Phoenix gets a bit of the better, and then I think Spartan's thrown onto the back of the car, and Phoenix is because again, they enjoy this fight, don't they? These guys kind of always enjoy these fights. In these movies, they always have pauses, and they're like, "That was good, wasn't it? That just smacked your chin."
It's sort of almost like they're sort of stretching themselves.
Yeah, they're kind of like a little bit more. Just after, it's like two brothers really going at it.
They both got out of prison, and they're just, this is much better.
Feels good, and I think Phoenix is almost like, it's glad that, they brought you back. They give me some contest here. They give me a bit of a challenge. And then with that, he actually electrocutes him with this cop baton that he has. But then he fires back with that magnetic gun.
Yeah,
finally charges, doesn't it?
2.6 minutes to achieve fusion, which personally worry me that this gun is going to achieve fusion. The fusion charge will be...
It takes 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
And then Phoenix fires it and actually escapes and gets away. And when Phoenix climbs out of the museum, he actually overcomes to the doctor, Dr. Cocteau. Is it Cocteau or... Yeah, I think so.
Cocteau.
Or Cocteau. They all said it a little bit differently, I felt. But anyway...
I call him Cocteau.
Cocteau. So he kind of comes out and Phoenix goes to shoot him, just execute him, and he can't. And then he says to him, "Don't you have a job to do? Don't you have someone to get..." And it's the same voice that he had heard in his head earlier.
It's the same little speech.
So it's good for us as the audience because you can see that, and he agrees and he runs off. And John rocks up. And the doctor kind of plays along. "Oh, you saved my life. You scared him off. Why don't you come to dinner?" And he's like, "Oh, okay." At Taco Bell, which is a bit like, take me to Taco Bell when you're the president or whatever the hell he is of this city. Anyway, so then we get he's going with Huxley.
It's not like a president would, have a presidential dinner that was all just fast food takeaway.
No, it's not. No president ever does that.
See, I'm telling you, this is a very, forward,
spot on,
seeing and relevant movie.
Speaking of president, while they're driving in the car to this dinner, Huxley informs him that the Schwarzenegger Library, I think is what they say. And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yes, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the famous actor, became the president. They waived the fact that you had to be born in the States to become president," again, which is the current rule.
This came out before Schwarzenegger became
became the mayor, the governor, sorry.
So, it is funny, and it was probably a last-minute addition to the movie as a joke in not acknowledgement of the Last Action Hero, which came out just before this one.
Yeah.
Where Stallone is supposedly starring as a Terminator.
Is in Terminator, yeah. So there's a nice kind of, they gave each other little nods.
But you see, just before they got in this car, though, there was that very interesting thing where they say, well, he's gotten away. We don't know where he is now. Like, he's got his guns. But that's okay. So all we have to do now is wait for another 187, and then we'll be there. And I feel as if Spartan's kind of, I'm glad we got to play.
No, he is, isn't he? Because Chief says that, and everyone's like, yeah, that's right. It's like Spartan's like, yeah, good plan. Like, so you're going to wait for him to kill someone and then locate that kill. Like,
follow the trail of murders.
It's nice. Pretty bad police.
But and the second one, then of course he questions about Taco Bell.
He does, and this is nice because I think you and I, anyone that grew up in the 80s and the 90s, you know that there was this massive war going on, wasn't it? I mean, we in Australia, we didn't quite have all of these companies, but she says, Taco Bell were the ones that survived the franchise wars, but it felt like that for a long time.
Just like the Coke and Pepsi rivalry got really heated around the 80s and coming to the 90s.
But the funny thing now, isn't it? It's like we have a disruptive, because of the internet, and also then we have this disruptive culture of like things like food vans.
Yeah.
So yes, you have those huge companies like McDonald's and Hungry Jack's and KFC, and they are huge franchises. And then even some of the other sort of restaurant style Sizzler or whatever, right? But it's like we've also then had a disruptor to the market of like food vans, and like anything, the public kind of votes with their wallet, and all of a sudden fast food, like a huge giant like Taco Bell, doesn't quite have the same ring to it anymore,
No,
but in this film they made it that
back in the days when we got McDonald's in Canberra, and my parents went, let's go and see what this is about, because we'd heard about it.
We've heard about McDonald's.
We're here in Australia, and McDonald's had arrived in Australia and Sydney and things, but one came to Canberra, and it was kind of a bit special to go in there and get it. It was all a bit weird because Australian hamburger joints are not even slightly like McDonald's, not even a little bit. And there's still a few of those around, the good old fish and chip shops and things. You can get the burger with a lot and so on.
Yeah.
But it was a bit special, and then certainly, coming through the 2000s, it's just kind of like, it's there,
It's there everywhere. But so it was kind of nice that they kind of made it that, okay, one of them survived, and
it was
just
also
every restaurant
an extension of this extremes that this movie's portraying. It's painting the warfare of the 90s, which included, massive competition
even
between companies,
restaurants, and
corporations, and now everything's all peaceful and relaxed. And there is only one restaurant.
There's only one restaurant.
Every restaurant is Taco Bell.
Restaurant is Taco Bell. Yeah, everyone's, and it's like that. Again, it's what Dennis Leary's character is fighting against, isn't it? It's like, no, I want to have a steak in the sun if I want to. Like I don't want to have to eat this.
Paint my body in green jelly and run naked through the streets.
So,
Jesus, okay. Go for it.
Anyway, at dinner, basically, he's told time and time again he's a dinosaur. He's prehistoric. He's too violent.
Yeah, the people make jokes at his.
And he's also told that. About that society. The doctor says, well, society crumbled and he made it special and safe. So, you need to honour that. And he actually says, well, actually, I was in a nightmare for 35 years. He remembers his wife visiting him. And they all kind of say, no, that's not possible. But his memory is that he remembers the 35 years kind of thing. And then he starts to notice these underground people, the Dennis Leary people, and they're kind of up to trouble, and they're like scoping out. And he says, he says to Huxley, something's up. This is like a cop, it's a gut feeling. Something's going on. And lo and behold, like there is something going on. And he runs out there, and these people attack a Taco Bell van, and they steal food. But he does a big action stunt, doesn't he? Like gets them all under the marquee that's in the sort of local area,
he's punching people up.
But interesting, there's one guy that he goes to fight, and the guy's like, just leave me alone, and like runs away, like he doesn't want to, even though he's a big brutish guy.
Drops the food and runs.
Kind of drops the food, and you notice that Spartan kind of, I think he's a bit more wise to it.
He's starting to look. He looks over, sees Dennis Leary at the food thing, and people stealing all the food, and he looks across at the other people.
Yeah.
And they're not,
they're not,
there's a crowd of people watching.
Yes.
And they're not being attacked or anything.
No, they're not sort of attacking.
They're not stealing into this wealth or
I think that's then after that he tries to stop this really big guy that's as big as him, and he like just drops the food and runs. Like he doesn't fight him or anything. Yeah. So I think he has a realization that these people are just hungry. And he's told that they're underground people, the scabs is what they're called.
Disgusting.
But he feels terrible realising that they're just actually hungry people. The doctor comes home after that and finds Phoenix in his home, and he's changed all the light codes.
And I like this. It's all
illuminate.
It's all voice activated. Which,
all...
out in my living room, we've got the little Google thing, and
so sophisticated there.
Yeah,
with your
and
Google.
we command her to play music for us, and put Netflix on and YouTube, and
she does all sorts of things for you.
Does amazing things. Mostly, I use her for cooking timers.
Gets your sex chair vibrating.
Get my sex chair ready. Hey, I won't say it because she'll be listening. No.
She'll get warm, the sex chair.
Yeah, it'll warm up. hose off the sex chair.
I was just going to say, like, cleanses itself from last time. Getting ready for this time. The vinyl. Scrape it down. Anyway, so...
we apologise for that break.
We do.
Regular scheduled listening.
But so Phoenix actually asked him, we need some hard men. Release these hard men and you'll get what you want. I'll kill Egner and I'll take care of Spartan and it'll all go back. But I just want a few extra henchmen, you know? And he gives them a list of names.
I don't want the real crazy killer types.
Yeah.
Because I only want one of those around, and that's me.
I only want one maniac, yeah. So then they're returning back to his new home. Huxley set him up in this sort of sophisticated apartment. It's very Japanese style, isn't it?
Oh, but I like Huxley's apartment.
Yeah, Huxley's apartment.
It's and there's a lot of there's not a lot, but there's some futuristic shows which sort of make this joke, and Futurama famously did it as well, where our own knowledge of history is quite sketchy. If you go back. If you go back, say, 200, 300, 400 years, we've got pretty good history. Like, people have got it recorded. If you go back to the time, say, before the Dark Ages, and the reason they're called Dark Ages is because we don't really know what happened. Like, you go back to the year 1000 or 800, you've got mostly sort of rumours and stories, and it's all intermingled. And the artifacts, what sort of clothes they wore, the food they ate, the armour, the weapons.
The details get a bit sketchy.
All those things, there's like a 500-year stretch, say, or it's probably even longer than that, probably like an 800-year stretch where it's all intermingled.
Yes.
And we kind of don't really know. So we've got movies where, like King Arthur, getting about, they're wearing this shiny steel plate mail armour, which didn't come around until like the 1500s. It was like the last stages of armour, just as guns were starting to come in. Like, prior to that, they couldn't forge those things. But we've got, people using crossbows when they didn't invent them. But
so
then they're using certain
Huxley
weapons. And Huxley's got her apartment to look like the 90s. Only it's the way she thinks the 90s is, and it's all over the place. Like, there's a poster of JFK, for example, from the 60s. Yeah. And then she's got, like, a jukebox, which would be more like, I don't know, the 50s even. But then she's also got, various sort of signage and advertising, which are probably more the 80s and 70s and things. But she's saying, oh, this is the ultimate 90s apartment, isn't it? And he's like, no, not really.
It's not quite right. But anyway. But she then is very outright and she says, do you want to have sex? And he's like, well, yeah, you're an attractive young woman, half my age at least. And I'll go for it. He was
about 50 when he did this movie.
Very Hollywood again. The woman has to be probably in her early 20s and, he's 50. So he's like, he kind of warms up a little bit. She says she's going to the bathroom. So you're expecting her to catch. She comes out just in a bathrobe. So he's kind of ready to start doing his thing. And she puts this metal thing on his head and tells him to relax. And he's confused. But she starts kind of moaning and groaning with her eyes shut with this thing. So he closes his eyes, and it's quite interesting how I liked how they did this because it's like you see these flashes, these cuts, and he doesn't quite like it because he's the Neanderthal man. And then he's like opening his eyes, looking at her, and he starts seeing things, and he starts to like it. And you see these flashes of her face, and strobing red coloured lights and stuff. And you do get, I remember when I saw this, the age I was being a bit excited.
Freeze filming it.
You do get...
Freeze framing it.
Well, I saw it at the movies, I remember, so you didn't get to freeze frame in the movies, but probably years later when I got the thing. But you get boobs. You get a couple of seconds of boobs.
Moment of boobs.
And I did look this up after watching this in terms of, are they Sandra Bullock's boobs? And I don't think they are.
No.
I don't know because I don't know her personally.
I wouldn't have expected
she could come on this show and correct us.
If Sandra Bullock wants to tell us if they're her boobs or not.
Or someone out there that maybe, as I suspect, played the body double could come on the show and tell us that they were her boobs and not Sandra Bullock's boobs. But it's an interesting thing. There's a Reddit forum out there about it and everything. So
really?
It just shows you how people get excited about these little flashes of boobs and, get into it.
It's kind of a little bit sad too.
It is very sad.
People who kind of there's so much in this movie that is, as I said, relevant, contemporary, future, good future vision,
good future,
and
interesting
social commentary and some funny jokes.
But there's boobs, sorry, there's boobs.
The one thing they actually make a subreddit about is the
Yeah. Hey, I'm not saying there's not subreddits about other bits of this film, but there is
5 frames of
possibly Bullock's boobs, but I don't think they are. But anyway, and then he gets too weirded out and he throws the machine and he suggests, let's have sex. And she's totally grossed out. She's like, no, that got ruled out because of AIDS and then other diseases.
Yeah, she listed a whole bunch of pandemics.
And so she kicks him out and he leaves. He's a good gentleman. He doesn't pursue it anymore. He checks out his apartment.
Actually, I got to say, I was quite pleased at that because it's like it's been 20 years, something. It's a long time since I've watched this movie. And I was going, oh, geez, I hope he doesn't push some sort of, but you really want it type of thing.
Yeah.
Instead, he's just like, he does sort of gently lean in for a bit of a kiss, but holds it there, and she backs up and goes, "Oh, what the hell? No, get out!" And he goes, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
I thought, but well, and he got out. So
he shows a good.
I was quite pleased with that. I went, "Oh, thank goodness they didn't go
any further." Yeah, and then he's checking out his apartment, and he kind of has a bit of a, I don't know, self-reflection in the mirror of what he's wearing and stuff. Anyway, and he'd asked her for this little mini DVD, which is great because it makes me think. You remember in about '92 there was super DVDs.
Well, she mentions I've watched all the laser discs, and
like
because that was the future apparently. It's like,
laser discs are the future, which are like record-sized DVDs, and then
if you don't know what a record
this was a little mini DVD, which at least they tried to do something like that.
Size of a garbage bin, the old laser disc, because someone might say we have records, but not a lot of people have seen them.
And you see the surveillance footage of Phoenix and Dr. Meeting and in fact revealing what happened, so he knows. And it's interesting there because he starts crocheting, I think they call it. Knitting. But I think it is crocheting when it's like that. There's a difference. But anyway, so he does that.
If you're a crocheting expert,
let us know.
Knitting expert.
So the next morning he walks up to Huxley and apologises and actually gives her a crocheted jumper, which she loves. And they're driving off, and he's talking about, well, why did I know how to do that? All I can think about since I've come out is that I want to knit, and he mentions a whole bunch of different knots and stuff. And she says, well, prisoners are supposed to have rehab where we train them on different things. He's like, all I can think about knitting. And then he starts to say, well, hang on, Phoenix seems stronger and smarter and he knows karate. So Huxley actually looks that up through the computer, and they realise that Phoenix did have all this training done.
Oh, yeah, like all the bad boy training.
The worst bad boy training you could imagine.
It's like the Matrix training, right?
It is. It's incredible,
And pretty much the same sort of thing. It just took a bit longer to download into his brain, but yeah.
It's a cool idea, but isn't it? Like, you go to sleep and get training in your sleep, It's the ultimate human learning.
It is the dream, because the number of things I think...
I'd love to know karate. I don't want to spend 8 years mastering it.
Yeah, I wish I knew how to do that. Because I've done a number of things like handyman type things. And my first go was always, it's okay. It does the job.
Yeah.
But you sort of think to yourself, okay, so there's this couple extra little tricks that no matter how many books you read or how many YouTube videos you watch, you just kind of don't get it until you...
It takes that master, which they talk about, 10,000 hours, don't they? 7 years of someone doing something to really become a master,
So being able to just plug your head in
plug your head in.
No stuff would be awesome, mate.
Plug that USB in, sorry, damn it. So anyway, they confront the doctor, who he denies, the connection, and he's talking to the doctor in those chairs that you were talking about, rotating chairs, and he just Spartan just blows them apart with his gun, saying, "This is what you want, violence," or something. And the assistant kind of just does a bit of a look off to the side, stage right.
Yeah.
And so Spartan is too clever for that, and he then has the gun at the doctor's head. And the doctor kind of makes it all emotional, and he says, well, the thing is, in this world, you're dead, your wife is dead, your family is dead, you don't exist. You know, you need to go back into the system and just go back to sleep. And Spartan replies, get fucked. Yeah. And the sensor thing spits off, and he shoots that sensor, which sort of shocks him.
I love these sensor things because every time he swears,
you hear it.
Even just a little background.
Yeah, and you always hear it.
In the background of the shot, you can see it with a little ticket come out. And that attention to detail is fantastic.
Yeah. And the doctor orders him back into Cairo, but Huxley doesn't actually arrest him. So, they leave, they go looking for Phoenix.
She says something, I'm quite conflicted.
Yeah, I'm quite conflicted. Anyway, and Spartan's just ignoring their authority anyway. And so he goes with Huxley, and Garcia gets to the sewer sort of pipe where he's like, well, you can't find Phoenix because he's underground now with these other underground people. Not that he really knows completely about them. And he says, well, you can come with me, or you can arrest me, but I'm going, Yeah. And Huxley and Garcia agree to go with him. And they end up in the sewers. And what's going on in the sewers, sorry?
Oh, everything. Life is going on in the sewers. Well, he gets down there and they're saying, be careful, watch out for anything.
They're all terrorists down here.
Yeah, and so they're sort of creeping along, and they step out, and it's like a street scene from Blade Runner, really. But yeah,
or Total Recall on Mars.
Yeah, on
quite
Mars.
Similar, isn't it?
There was a lot of aesthetic similarities with Total Recall.
But what you're seeing is families and children.
Yeah, there's people, and then
people working and selling and marketplaces.
Yeah, they're sitting down and chatting and stuff.
Yeah. They're normal. It's the normal.
Yeah, Spartan starts to relax a bit. He's going, this is not at all what I thought.
No.
And then they go...
And she actually says they're not acting hostile.
Yeah, they're not attacking us.
They're not attacking us. Like, they're surprised. They're actually a bit, afraid of the police.
Yeah, and then they recoil from the stench.
Oh,
they're revolting stench.
And he sniffs and he likes it. And what does he head to?
That kind of turned my stomach a little bit first. With they're down in his underground, they smell... He goes to a bar and there's some woman...
cooking beef.
Spanish. She's cooking burgers.
Yeah.
And he orders a burger and a beer, and he gets them
and he
hands over the Rolex, Huxley's Rolex watch, which looks sort of funky, Apple Watch if you like, and he gets the burger. He starts eating. He says, "Oh, this is a really good burger.
It's the best burger ever."
He says, and Huxley says, "I'm like, it's not beef. Where are the cows?"
Yeah.
And he stops and goes, What is it? He goes, ratto. Oh, rat. This is rat. And he looks for a little bit.
He keeps chewing.
Takes another bite. Best burger I've had. And he walks up, continuing to eat it.
Yeah. And in the next shot, he finishes eating it. Which is great.
It's quite unusual to see someone eat food in a movie.
It is.
It's very unusual.
It is. So this is where she sees that muscle car that you talked about. Their Freedom. It's a big red muscle car, 1970s. She lists off everything about it, which is a good sort of
it's a strange choice though for muscle car because you would have thought they would go for something like a bit more like a Corvette or a Mustang or a Chevelle or a Pontiac GTO or something.
This is that down. It's that what I was saying about it. Look, I'm not a total car guy, but it's like it takes you down to something like a Holden Kingswood because it's like. This is the down-to-earth, everyday person car, I think. And I think that's the difference. So there's muscle car, which is those cars. In Australia, the Ford Falcon and the Kingswood and the Commodore and the Tirana, they're the everyday person. But then, of course, you can have the really up GTS, the real upmarket kind of, thing that costs 3 times it. And I think that's the same with this car. It's a real muscle car. It's not something that is outside of that realm of the everyday person, I think.
Yeah, well, maybe it's a cultural thing that I'm missing here, but because it says it's an Oldsmobile 422 or something like that, and I thought to myself, Oldsmobile, it's just like, what the hell car is that? That'd be like saying, oh no, that's not a Holden Commodore, that's I don't know, what's a crazy ass little thing? That's a Toyota
Ferrari.
What's one of those ones? The Toyota Lexus.
Yeah,
and you kind of go, oh, what?
Yeah,
that's just weird.
Who remembers that car?
Yeah, it's a weird sort of little car. The Lexus was actually just a rebadged Commodore anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, so is it, maybe it's a cultural thing, maybe American car enthusiasts would go, the Oldsmobile, that was the real...
Yeah.
Maybe that's the real common car.
Well, I think so. And anyway, they're looking and admiring this car when Egner rocks up with a few goons and they threaten them with guns. Spartan doesn't really kind of blink an eyelid over it. And he actually says, well, I don't like the doctor. When this is all over, I'm going to take down the doctor. And so Egner does his rant, which is the arsehole song.
Yes.
I'm sure it is the arsehole song. If you're out there, let me know. Because he rants about being freedom and all this sort of stuff. And at the end of it, he just says, all I want to do is bury Qatar up to his neck in shit.
Oh.
Which is a great line. It's so like, the Goonies and stuff in the 80s, where it was all about shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then we cut to Phoenix, who's now with all his sidekicks. Who the hell is the man in there, which I loved? I knew this was coming in this film, by the way, from the opening credits. But Phoenix, he says, he gives him the plan. We're going to take out this Egner guy, and then we're going to take out the doctor, and we're going to just control this city.
Yeah.
Because they're not used to violence. We're just going to overtake it. This pussy-whipped world, he says. And when he's saying that, he's looking at Jesse Ventura. Who's Jesse Ventura? Sorry.
He's a sexual tyrannosaurus, just like me.
A wrestler and from Predator. We love it. He's back in this film. I love it. He's a connected, big, muscly man. They all sort of head off to kill Egner, and they come across actually the fact that, hang on, he's right here. Spartan's here.
They see they're having like a cup of coffee.
They're just standing there. And so they attack. There's a gunfight. There's a good old-fashioned fight going on between some of the henchmen and Jesse Ventura. It's all happening. And in fact, Spartan gets the upper hand of Phoenix, who then has to kind of escape. And he runs up the
and of course,
fire escape kind of thing.
I think, who is his Chekhov's gun? So we see this muscle car. It must therefore be used in a chase.
And so Huxley and...
could you imagine how disappointing that would be if we just
saw this car
and they sort of rattle off all of its details and so forth.
And then you never use it.
And that's it. That's the last we ever see it again.
Yeah.
That would be killed.
Phoenix escapes up this ladder, and Spartan actually says, do you realise that this is a lift? And so he rips a bit of the chunk of the wall off, and there's old controls there, so he turns it on. And it's a great moment that then... Phoenix gets up into the real world, hops in the cop car, takes off down the road, and then Spartan and Huxley just come up and they launch into a modern day car showroom, don't they, of all places.
I don't know how that lift does that. It's a bit of like a glass elevator event there. The lift actually extends above the...
Sorry, it's the same
level?
as the Mythbusters concept. It wouldn't go through that in reality, but this is a Hollywood film.
I don't know, maybe car lifts... hydraulic underneath and push up through floors often.
It didn't matter. It made the scene
It looked awesome because it smashed up and the floor fell off.
People flew away and all this.
Guns it and it goes roars to life and he smashes through the glass. Of course.
Does.
People jumping to the side.
That's it.
Tremendously dangerous.
You always love that, don't you? They always do that as well. Whenever a car has to smash through glass, there's always just people standing there. They're like, ah!
You have to jump to the side.
That would be terrifying, wouldn't it? If a huge car is roaring to you from inside.
You'd probably go into shock and sit there,
You'd probably just stand there and get run over.
Have a hypoglycemic bloody drop.
And that amount of glass smashing, you'd probably get cut up. But anyway.
But this is a movie, and if gasoline's going to get lit on fire by cigarette butts, then cars smashing through windows don't kill.
Anyway, so he flies it down the freeway, catches up to Phoenix. They're having a good old car chase. He gets Huxley to take over. He jumps on the front. And he tells her, and she knows. She's like, oh, yeah, they do this in Lethal Weapon. We're gonna do this. So she drives up. He jumps onto the cop car. They have a bit of a shootout. He slams his arm, bits of the car.
Phoenix is talking to himself constantly.
He is.
He's making a little commentary. Oh, you're up there. I'm going to shoot you up there. I shoot you up there.
Very...
hey, how about this? I'm going to get you over here and get you...
Yeah, it's a bit... Coyote, isn't it? From Coyote and the Roadrunner. It's like commenting... on what I'm about to do to the good guy. That's sort of that idea of...
I wouldn't have thought the Coyote doesn't comment, but yeah, no.
But he does, because he's always like, oh, haha, TNT, I'm going to get you. You know what I mean? It's not commentary so much, but it's revealing that money's set constantly.
opens the door and puts his gun and says, "Say hello to my little friend."
Yeah.
It's, Scarface reference. And
Yes.
they fight and bits and pieces. And Spartan wrestles the gun off him and uses it to wrench the door out. And then that drops aside, and he jumps in and starts having a fist fight.
And they're fighting against the speeding freeway.
Phoenix gets the upper hand and starts pushing John down and bumps him against the road a couple of times. And then, not before then, John sort of redoubles his efforts and launches Phoenix out.
He pulls him over himself, doesn't he?
Lucky Phoenix was wearing tire rubber armor on the road. He rolls off. But then the controls of the car are messed up.
They're too
damaged. And he can't control. He tries to command it left and right a bit, and then it launches off over a... Is that the police station?
It is. It goes straight into the police station, of all places.
Over the little nameplate thing.
Smashes
and
the sign.
Into the pond.
Yeah.
And his car, last thing was his car fills with foam.
Yeah, it does, as it hits.
Which I think was really good. And this is one of those things we do like in science fiction where they show off these science fiction elements. They could have easily just had the car crash.
Yep.
They could have had the car crash off screen. And he just, because it wasn't really important. But... it was just kind of cool that they revealed that here's a future car technology.
And it's funny as well after that, and I thought this even as a kid, because he kind of gets out and he's okay, and Huxley's actually like, "Oh, are you okay? Like, you're brushing away the foam. Like, oh, that would have been really like annoying, all that foam." He's like, and yet he's walking away from something that would probably kill you in the 90s, So that was quite nice. The chief then confronts him. Hughes is again going back to being a brute. And just as this, and you're going to be under arrest and all that, then Egner arrives with his big gang. And they the chief is like, "Oh, what do we do? We're going to have a fight here." And Spartan is actually saying, "Well, we're going after Phoenix and the doctor. You're not arresting us. You can't do anything about it. Give me a gun, give me another gun." And Chief says, "Huxley, arrest him." And she says, "Take this job and shovel it." Yes,
one of her many mangled phrases. The other one was when they're going down into the underground. They say, we'll find this guy and we'll blow him.
Yeah.
And then there's like a pause and John looks and says, "Blow him away." Well, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
So, but the point is that she's kind of saying, "Nah, bugger it." Phoenix is talking really happy to the doctor, who says everyone is terrified. The doctor's really happy, not Phoenix so much. Phoenix does try to kill him, but he just can't pull the trigger. So he says to Jesse Ventura, "Kill him," and he just does. Yeah, bang, bang, bang. And they laugh and they chuck their body into the fire.
Yeah, that's quite brutal. I thought
it was really, and I actually was like, "Oh wow, that's really cool," because it's not that traditional like, "Oh, he's the big henchman of the city and John Spartan's going to have to fight him at some point, and it's maybe like on top of a building."
I was actually this.
I was like, wow, that's just like a real like get rid of him plot point.
Well,
isn't it?
this watch through, being older and wiser, I was going, how would John how would this end?
Yeah, because he can't fight him because he's just an old man.
Yeah, he's not a combatant. He's not like a mastermind criminal. No. He's just like a doofus who ultimately does want peace and order.
Just going about it the wrong way.
How would he resolve that if Phoenix didn't kill him? How on earth would he resolve that situation?
Yeah, I know, it's a tough one, isn't it? Anyway, so they brutally kill him.
Yeah, killed, thrown in the fire, burnt.
Huxley and Spartan then attack, this building, the henchmen. They're fighting these men to the death, and we realise she can actually fight.
Thanks to Jackie Chan.
They also then discover the doctor is dead in the fire, in the ashes. He's already turned to ashes that quickly. And Phoenix.
It would have been a bit gruesome to have a charred corpse.
But Phoenix's plan is releasing all the bad boys from the 90s, cryo-prison. So he's starting that process.
And he specifically mentions, who does he mention? That serial killer? Jeffrey Dahmer. Yeah.
I like that guy.
Except the funny thing is a lot of these serial killers they're not criminals in that sense. They're murderers, but they're not...
They wouldn't be really on his side in that way, no.
They're not robbing banks. They're not, what do you call it, like Al Capone or... Bonnie
They're
and Clyde.
masterminds in that way. They're just serial murderers,
they're socially misaligned.
They're after some
in that sense. But so it would have been quite useless having him released because he would probably not do a lot.
No. But there was the point of like terror in the city. I think that was the idea. So if you had Dahmer out there eating people's penises and stuff, as he was known to do, it would probably create a lot of terror in this.
Well, in some countries, all they eat is penises.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't realise that's where you came from.
Be a little bit more sensitive.
Your home country, sorry.
Germany, mostly, where they cannibal advertise.
I won't go down that path of what the Germans would like to do with penises. But so Spartan decides not to knock out Huxley, which this to me is that gender thing. I won't go into it because I think we've already been talking for too long at this point in time. But he knocks her out, and he so she's knocked out. But the point there is then she doesn't get in his way,
It's also the point that, from the point of view of the storyline, she had to be out of the scene so you could get the one-on-one.
That's exactly
because
right.
The final confrontation, and we know this from the way the story's developing. We inherently know that the story must be a single one-on-one
between Phoenix and Spartan. Yeah,
not a confrontation, because there's no strong relationship raised between Spartan and Huxley. So if there had been sort of this romance subplot, a stronger romance subplot, then you would have maybe had her there to be held hostage and have to make some terrible decision.
What I was thinking is he could have tried to go kill Phoenix, but then realised he actually needs the help of Huxley, this time, compared to what happened at the beginning.
I don't think that wasn't being developed.
It wasn't quite the quest of his character.
That would also have been a good, I think, growth point there, where he grows away from this Demolition Man
one guy
to being let's be a bit more of a team player.
Yeah, how would you take him down?
But instead, this is
Demolition Man.
This is the movie where he has to settle his grudge.
So anyway, he knocks her out, and anyway, all these prisoners are starting to be released, and Phoenix is told, they're all on their way out. So he just guns down all the scientists, which I think is important because again, then John's gonna blow up the place. He's not going to kill innocent people this time.
Yeah, there's
so there's a little point to that as well. But enter John Spartan. They have a good old-fashioned gun battle to begin with. And then Phoenix, when their guns stop working, Phoenix actually captures him with the huge mechanical arm that lifts the ice blocks out with the people in it. And he kind of gets stung and he hoists him right up into the sky inside this cryo-prison. And he's tormenting him. But John gets the upper hand just by sort of breaking the fuse of the thing.
He was spraying him with a machine gun.
Yeah,
while he was teasing him, just firing odd
bullets
shots
all over
him.
the place.
And it ran out of bullets, so he goes, stupid thing.
Yeah.
And that cut one of the lines.
It did, so he could freeze the mechanical arm a bit,
And with a mighty kick, he kicks his way out just in time.
Just in time and jumps down. And because also he's fired all these bullets, there's all the cryo-freezing fluid is starting to flow everywhere as well. So the whole place is starting to get a bit chaotic. But it's a connection back to the gasoline at the start. They've all run out of weapons and they have a good old-fashioned, again, it's like the same. They stand off, are you ready for this?
It's going to be so good.
This is the bit that we really like. We don't actually like the guns. I'm deliberately missing you, to be honest, because I just want to get in there and throw a few punches. And so they do. They start fighting. At the same time, the prison is starting to spark up and things are starting to fall apart a bit and collapse. You always have this impression.
Cutting laser thing that Phoenix uses at one point, so it slashes through a whole bunch of stuff and it goes crazy.
Things start, this always happens, things start, there's either a fire or something, in this context, this big futuristic prison is starting to collapse because everything has kind of gone astray with all the bullets and the fighting. Spartan is losing the battle and he kind of rolls over on the floor and Phoenix is he's like, oh, this is the best day of my life because he's about to kill him. And this Spartan knows the fluid. And so he charges up that old cop baton that seemed pretty useless so far. And he just rams it into the fluid, doesn't he?
No, there was a freezy... But
was it? I thought it was the
No, it was the freezy... sphere ball. It's in
okay.
it's in that cylindry tube thing that looks like a cop bat.
Okay, so I've got to be confused.
He smashes that on the ground.
That's right. He smashes it on the ground, so then that ignites the fluid, but instead of a fire, it turns it into the freezing.
He says, just before he says, just me, or is it a bit cold in here? Which is just a throwback again to make sure you remember the start.
So this instantly freezes the fluid, which Phoenix is standing in, so it slowly freezes him up. Spartan, however, just jumps out of the way as it would have frozen him well. Just jumps and grabs that mechanical arm that he was stuck to earlier. So he avoids contamination. This
swings him around
the room, like the really large room. Phoenix freezes head to, from top to tail. Everything else, the walls and everything is freezing up. And as he comes around, he says, "Heads up."
Heads up.
And Phoenix frozen over, of course, and he kicks his head off him, and a bit of blood and stuff. Frozen blood spills over.
He bounces once and then shatters into a million pieces.
Yeah.
It's just...
And then he jumps down because the mechanical arm is freezing, so that again he doesn't get contaminated.
Yeah,
perfect.
And he goes running out of there, and explosions, and the whole prison complex basically just shoots a big gush of fire
things
out
everywhere.
Just again the same as the startup, but this time he didn't say
kill. Yeah,
he didn't say Phoenix. He kicked his head off.
Kicked his head off, but at the same time,
with a one-liner,
there wasn't the good ones. And when he gets out, the chief says, "Did you arrest him?" He says, "No, he won't be bothering anyone anymore." And this is that thing that we were talking about earlier, that Egner kind of comes up and he wants a riot, he wants to party, he wants to have a good time, and the chief is confused. And it's quite nice because Spartan actually says, "No, you both need to tone it down and come to some sort of thing. You'll work it out." Like, he doesn't have the answer, but he says you'll get to some sort of thing. Huxley is really unhappy she knocked him out, and this is where I'm talking about a bit of that male kind of thing, because he just goes, "Oh, woman unhappy, I'll just kiss you."
Yeah, and then he just
slops a big juicy one on her.
Steals
a kiss off her.
That's a bit rude.
Yeah, but then she likes it, and she's like, "Oh, is all fluid transmission like this?" and kisses him back. And he says, "I think I like the future, actually." And she says, "Now that you've demolished it," which is again a nice little touch back to Demolition Man. And he walks away off into the distance saying, "How do those damn 3 seashells work?"
Yeah,
Roll credits. The end, sorry.
And Sting sung the last
Did he?
of that, which reminded me, actually, speaking of Lethal Weapon, where Eric Clapton did the ending titles for Lethal Weapon 2, I seem to understand. So, which I found was sort of funny that these big action films, which are kind of really bit brutish and overly heteronormative sort of Neanderthals, which is why we love them so much. But then they have these sort of quite famous musicians doing the ending titles for it, which is
it's interesting, isn't it?
Quite an interesting. I don't know how you approach Sting and say, "We want you to do the ending titles for a movie like this," and he goes, "Oh yeah, why not?
Why not?
Eric Clapton did the.
It's a bit of a softer end, isn't it? Music wise. So let's just talk about the latter then, because this one comes under the classic. For me, I am kind of ordering them. I know you're just kind of putting them into alphabetical. So
I think there is a bit of an order in my head as to. But the problem is, it depends on whether I'm ordering it by how significant it is to the genre versus
that's a good point.
How many times I want to watch it or refer to it, or how much relevance it has to me when I watched it. Those sorts of things, they're questions that are a bit difficult to entirely sort out.
I'm just doing it the other way, which is I actually am kind of ordering, and as we're watching them this time through Space Brains, I'm just kind of going, what one do I like a bit more? So for me, this one does come in after Total Recall, but above Predator. So those ladders,
I would have put Predator above it, but it's hard to do because any one of these I'd watch at a drop of a hat.
Like, it's funny because I would re-watch all of these again. That's why we're picking them. That's why they are classics. But it just, I don't know. Like, I like the fun of this film. I think this film has that. Like, I love the future side of it, and then I love the fun of it. It kind of takes a little bit of a mickey out of itself.
It does have quite a few sort of jokes in there.
In-jokes, 90s in-jokes. I felt a little bit like a teenage boy watching this again. Like, I don't know, it just kind of still captures me a lot. I don't think it's actually quite as sophisticated as Total Recall. Like I really think Total Recall is that whole package as a sci-fi, but I don't think this. And I do remember that some people at the time they joked that this film was not very good, and I was like, as a teenage boy, going, "Oh, what are they bloody talking about?" But like, even watching it now, I'm like, "No, it's quite sophisticated. This film, like, it's quite clever. It does joke about itself." And then I think you could probably argue that some of those self-referential jokes maybe take the audience then out of the world a little bit too much. You know, like the fact of having literally that she likes Lethal Weapon, maybe that's a little bit too far down the path.
It is funny.
But then
it is funny though, because
I like that.
You see those sorts of things and you're not used to seeing references to existing reality.
That's right.
Which is frustrating, I find, in a number of like horror type movies where, particularly zombie movies or vampire, you sort of think, so here's this zombie outbreak has happened. You're telling me there's not been one single horror movie ever in that universe, let alone a horror movie that has featured zombies.
That's right.
Are you saying no one has ever come up with that
so
concept?
There's the extremities, and there's something like Scream that references like Freddy Krueger when Wes Craven is now the director of Scream, and so it's like referencing the exact same films that the director has been behind and been successful with. And other than horror films, that's what Scream does really well. But then, you're exactly right. You get other horror films that like, oh, this is the first time ever that there's a monster. It's like what? Like, have you not heard of Frankenstein? Like, have you not heard of like even like older horror stories? So you're exactly right.
So when you do see it in a movie like this, where you see a Lethal Weapon poster, you do feel a bit kind of, oh, that's really kind of weird. Yeah, like it's understandable because Lethal Weapon was a big movie at its time. Yeah. They have the Lethal Weapon 2 up there. Yes. And the Red Hot Chili Peppers poster.
Yeah, like again, it's
big band, huge band at the time. There's still great music and they've produced some good stuff. They've got a bit of a history of being a movie. I remember seeing them, one of their first movies, one of these like Gidget surf movies. Yeah, yeah. You can just recognise them because they're playing nothing that's on their album. Yeah. But you recognise the Chili Peppers when you see them. But anyway, it is a bit weird. I suppose maybe it feels a bit like a product placement more so than a reality sort of thing. But it was supposed to be setting up like, it's the same as you walk into these retro restaurants now and they're retro in like 1950s or 60s culture. Well, you know what they're really doing
now. And it's too much. It's like OTT, and then this is what Huxley is like. It's like she's covered the wall and all this stuff. There's a particular restaurant in Perth, the hamburger one, that does that. I won't mention names, but like they do that retro look, and it's like, but they do it OTT. Like,
is that the one
every single sign. There's Fast Eddie's that does it.
Fast Eddie's
but again, they do that all they do, because I knew a guy that worked there many years ago. It's like when they built a new store, it's like they just literally buy all that shit off someone, and they just plaster it everywhere. There's no relevance to it so much, and it felt a bit like that with Huxley, but I liked that there was that kind of connection. What about just one best scene? Because I'm conscious of the time. I think we should move.
The twin first and last scenes. Yeah. The last scene in particular it's a scene you don't see very often anymore. The sort of composition where there is freaking everything happening. Like I was really paying attention to this. There was strobing of lights, there was steam and gas flying, there was bits of sort of fire, there was shooting and banging and
the
machines moving about. Yeah. It was so visually and audibly intense. Yep. The whole thing, you could not have made it more an intense situation. Mm-hmm. And then it all culminates with what you can see sort of coming is in that pause with, is it getting just me or is it cold in here? And you can see Phoenix knows what's happening. He's pulled back. What's he got? He's going to hit or shoot or do something. Yeah. And he smashes it.
He's stuck. Yeah.
Just that whole fight scene is hard to do that and pull it off well. And you can tell there's a lot of action movies that have come and gone since then that just don't do it. Yeah. Or they've tried and failed.
I know way back with this movie, and we can probably Google and find it out, but I remember seeing in the aftermath of this movie, Sylvester Stallone saying that Wesley Snipes and him threw real punches in those scenes. Like they not to much of them up, but it was just like, that's how they kind of acted it out. Like as two actors, they were like, just hit me. You know what I mean? Like they just kind of went for a full old fashioned, just give us a few actual punches. Like, we're not going to pretend to act here. Just throw something at me, an elbow, a head. Like, they didn't really choreograph it so much, and I think you can see that in this film, that they really do have a bit of a hit out, you know, and it works well.
Yeah, it's good. So, and again, the first scene there, it was just so much. There's helicopters coming in, there's anti-aircraft gunfire shooting off around them. He bungee jumps down into this
I know, it's incredible,
ruined building amid gunfire and, you know, blasts his way through. And it was just those two scenes as one scene together of that mirror. It was just, it was really well done. There's one other fight scene that I've seen was similar in some ways. There's a movie by Jet Li called The One. I don't know if you've seen it. A bit of a science fiction film about multiple universes. But at the end of that, they're in a steelworks or something, and there's these big machines clunking and banging and sparks flying everywhere. So when they're doing their martial arts, the sparks and everything are all in slow motion because they're supposedly fighting super fast and strong.
Yeah, right.
And so you get this real, like, there's these red glows and sparks splashing everywhere and hammers smashing and... Yeah, it's such an intense and interesting thing that it's fun. It's almost like a Pope in the swimming pool, you know, like the scene and everything's so exciting that you're not paying attention to how dull sometimes a fist fight can be. Yeah. You know, you see some of these fist fights and you're kind of going... Yeah, in fact, the latest Star Wars one with the Rey and Kylo lightsaber battles, a lot of those were kind of... I just remember watching going... Okay, so when is this one finished? Because like nothing is going to happen. Yeah, I know they're both going to live, and it's all going to be fine. So they're just on and on and on. And you're just finish this fight, get to the rest of the story. Yeah. But yeah, this favorite scene was that big fight. I mean, there's so many really great scenes. Yeah, I'd love to go with them, but yeah, that you feel closure. Yep. The fact that he gets his head kicked off. Yes. There's again. Particularly in these late 80s, early 90s action films, the bad guy has to die really convincingly. Yeah, he has to be dead. So a head shattering. There can't be. So it always has to be like he gets shot, he falls backwards off a cliff and impales onto something that impales right through him. Like, you're not coming back. Or into a wood chipper or something terrible. Yeah, that's right. Because the other trick, of course, was like the Die Hard trick where the bad guy gets strung up by a chain and after having been thrashed to a pulp. Yeah. But then somehow it comes out at the end. Like, you go, no! And then, so, that end scene, my favourite scene. And yourself? I loved those. I loved that. I felt like the start and the end, they foreshadow each other so well. And they do that really well. It's really different, but I really liked the restaurant scene. So when they do go to Taco Bell, I think there's some really nice little details. The food, the waitering, the fact of what they're wearing, the fact that everyone else at the table considered John Spartan like a dinosaur, prehistoric. When he does swear, it's off in the background. You hear the swearing machine going. The idea that he does look at the people stealing the food, and it's kind of like, it's a cop thing, it's a hunch thing. There was so many just little. And they basically, the doctor and him and everyone else, they're all against him, and yet he just sits there and kind of takes it, you know what I mean? And it's kind of a nice impression of who he is beyond that action hero, I think. And then also just all of those little futuristic details, you know, even the food, I remember he said, good thing I'm not hungry, because it's just these tiny little things, which again... It was a real fashion back in the day. Yeah, it was, but... you thought Taco Bell, it's probably faster, it's going to be this big sloppy taco or something, you know, but no, it's this little you're exactly right, something that's beyond what we even consider to be food. But I just liked the simplicity of that scene, but it's a really good beat point for the whole film, you know, because it is then him realising that these so-called terrorists are actually just everyday people looking for food, you know. It's a very old-fashioned story, in fact, isn't it? Like the poor underclass stealing food to survive, and the upper class kind of go, how dare they, they're terrorists, you know? And so it's sort of, it's just a nice scene, that one, in the context of the film. It really stands out to me. So, sorry, tell me about the science behind Demolition Man. Well, what I really liked about this movie in particular, because it's from 93 to 2032, which 2032 is only 12 years in the future, we can see a lot of the technology that will be around 2032 already. And I certainly remember 1993-ish or 1996 when I was doing. So it's really interesting to see the premonitions they had, the ideas they had of what was going to be in the future. And the things that I think they got really spot on. One, electric cars. In 12 years' time, certainly, like already Tesla as a car company is making a profit, which is unusual. A lot of car companies are not making big profits, or they're really struggling to do so. They are building out, diversity of things and very affordable and usable electric cars. You can well imagine in 12 years' time, so 2032, we would have, electric cars will be very common. I already see one driving here commonly. Hybrids are quite common to see. They're not unusual to see.
There is more and more brands, like the big brands, Nissan and Mazda and blah, 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 that are bringing out like more and more electric across their field.
So I think, definitely 12 years' time, electric cars, they got that one spot on, I think. The other one, self-driving cars. We're not going to have driving cars like they just showed in that. They're like, that's a little bit too, we're really trying hard, but there's...
That's probably 20 years away or 30 years away.
Geez, there are so many problems. I was going over all this with my daughter. I do a bit of a pre-game sort of...
a pre-podcast.
Yeah, sort of prep work, but explaining things to my daughter. It's quite good. But one of the things, of course, is anticipation. It's so hard to teach a computer how to anticipate. Because I was telling my daughter, for example, when I'm driving, I'm not really looking at... I look at the cars around me, obviously. But I pay more attention. For example, I see up ahead, lights are changing, but the car ahead of me hasn't started putting on its brakes yet.
Yeah.
And so I go, he might be turning right, and so suddenly, pull out into the slip lane, leaving, a bank of parked cars. So I'm going to start slowing down now, and I look across, and I see the guy in the left-hand lane. I'm not looking at the car. I see him, he flicks his head to his side view mirrors, for example. I go, okay, he might be changing lanes. And the same time, there's a kid riding a bike past, and they're sort of, and you're taking all these little subtle cues of going, what might happen is, okay, that guy is changing lanes. I'll back off a little bit. Yeah, he has turned right.
A bus or something that's up ahead, that thing's
put the brakes on. How do you teach a computer to not look at the car, but look at the person inside the car and how they're flicking their head around? Or, if they keep reaching down to adjust something, so you're going, okay, they're probably not paying great attention. I'm going to give them a bit more room. You can't train a computer to do that very well. You can't do it now, I would say. Sometime in the future, maybe. So until we have a really high proportion of networked cars which are computer controlled, where the computers, the cars can tell each other, hey, I'm changing lanes. Like, oh, no worries, we'll all orchestrate that. We're just not going to do it. But certainly 12 years' time, largely, they've got these levels of self-driving from 0 through to 5, where 5 is like what they show in the movie, where there's totally automated.
Self-drive.
0 is nothing. 1 is sort of like cruise control, adaptive cruise control, that sort of level. And in between there is where you got the Tesla autopilot, which will keep you in your lane and maintain your speed and keep distance of cars around you. And it's done it so well that there have been people filmed sleeping on the freeway. And there's been a couple of crashes to which Tesla sort of says, well, yes, if you go to sleep in your car on the freeway, you're going to have a crash.
Yeah.
We're not responsible for you going to sleep in a car.
Still got to drive.
You've got to drive the damn car. It's kind of their own fault, though, for calling it autopilot, when in reality it's... But similar problems with cruise control, people would take their hands off the wheel for some unknowable reason. But yeah, so we're getting towards self-driving cars. 12 years' time, I predict there'll be more cars with those helpful features, like keep you in your lanes, braking, avoiding accidents. Not so much. So in 93, there were no mobile phones. There were some mobile phones, obviously, but they weren't a thing.
Or a phone.
Yeah, you could get a phone that you often I remember
had a huge antenna at the top.
It was fancy to have a car phone.
A car phone,
in your limos.
Yeah.
That was quite common at that sort of time, where you'd have a person would be on a phone and have a cord from the handset down into the console. And so there was that sort of thing. So in the movie, they showed people with those they did have like little tablets,
Yeah.
computers. Like, so the warden is going through and he's got like a tablet computer.
Yeah.
So absolutely, we'll have
Yep.
those still in the future. And they're all networked with wireless networked. And the cops had their little funny thing, the handheld instruction giver.
Yeah.
And another one. So that's definitely in. They've predicted tablets, wireless ubiquity, and mobile phones. Even though they still had the sort of phone booth thing with it, I don't think there's enough vision there to realise that the power of that would be so cheap that basically everyone, even homeless people, can afford to have a phone, type of thing. It's who was it? Was it Edison who said he will make electricity so cheap that only the wealthy will burn candles? Yeah, so and that's the way it is now. It's only the wealthy will go without a phone.
Yeah,
because if you're rich enough, you don't need a phone.
No,
you've got other people to have phones, or there are places you're going that will have phones.
Yeah, definitely.
So they've got the phones, they got mobile ubiquity, they got electric cars, self-driving cars. I think they're a little bit ahead of the game.
Yeah.
I would say sort of cultural movement towards greater tolerance. I like to think that's the case. We keep having these sort of road bumps where people have to be reminded that no, we still have some systemic issues to deal with. And I always like to think that one day in the perfect future, we will be able to make jokes at the expense of, gender or race because the joke will be that it doesn't happen.
Yeah. And
no one is alive to remember. It's like we can sort of make jokes about things that happened in the Vikings.
Yeah.
We can make Viking jokes because no one really remembers that time, and it's the traditions of chopping someone's ribs open and pulling their lungs out and flopping them over their shoulders is so far removed from anything we do now that you can laugh about it. But so I like to think there'll be one day in the future where you can dress up as a racial stereotype and make silly jokes because people will go, "Oh, what a silly person," because that won't be bringing up a history of evil and oppression anymore. It will just be it'll be a pure lampooning parody, and people will laugh about it because it's so ridiculous. And I like to think we are moving towards that. Well, not to the jokes, but we are moving to the point where, and it's not 12 years, but I did like to see that they sort of showed that we're going towards that more Star Trek sort of, people trying to appreciate everyone.
And Huxley's an example of that in terms of the violence. So it's like they've been removed from that violence so rapidly, and then had this nice society that she's, because she says, "Oh, didn't you read my thesis? About the 90s action." It's kind of that idea, I think, that you're talking about. That it's like it almost becomes so far removed that it's a history lesson that that happened so long ago that we can't be offended by it. Like, how can we be offended by it?
Yeah, I mean, in the show, of course, it was only,
but I think it's a bit
30
too rapid.
years.
Yeah.
It was a bit speedy, but
if it was 100 years.
But they're picking on that, So it's quite nice that they didn't show any space travel or they even mention anything about that. So that's kind of actually, I think, pretty good, because often there's a somewhat enthusiastic idea of how quickly we'll be traipsing about space in a common fashion. But so I think those are some really good predictions that the film has made and have sort of stood up.
Definitely.
Unlike hoverboards from Back to the Future, we have nothing that hovers.
Damn it! Where is my hoverboard? Where's my flying car?
Yeah. Well, Ivy was telling me, my daughter was telling me about, what we can do with self-driving is flying cars, because then you don't have to worry about hitting trees or crashing into things.
Yeah.
I said, absolutely. Once we get cars talking to each other, you could have flying cars if they self-communicate, because, you can fly above the trees and buildings, and all the cars would communicate and could layer themselves vertically
automatically
so that they don't hit each other.
Fifth
and
element.
then she said the next thing was teleporting.
Yes.
But you'd have to have security. Otherwise, you could just teleport into Adventure World when it was closed.
Yes.
I thought that was it. So there you go. Ooh, pardon me. So that's my quick run. I was going to talk about more about self-driving cars or more about, the cryo. But I've spoken about cryo and stuff. I thought it's just interesting to look at the future predictions, which were also the 90s with the old.
Yes.
Because, and the only songs that got preserved were jingles, as it turns out. But that is kind of a bit of a joke on the fact that, what was it called? Survivalist bias, I think is the concept where you only see the things that survive. Oh, did you hear that great story? I'm just going to quickly tell it. So the British warplanes were coming back fighting over Germany, and they got bullet holes all through them. So the engineers and so forth, or the mathematicians are going to go, okay, so let's map out where all these bullet holes were, so we can figure out where we need to reinforce the plane to protect them. And then a little while into that, an engineer sort of points out, well, hold on. The problem with that is these are the planes that have come back alive. The bullet holes are where we don't have to protect it, because there's clusters that are missing these sort of around the cockpit and a bit. So only the planes that didn't get hit in those spots are the ones that survive. So you've got that survival bias. So I like that little nod there that they're showing the jingles because in the future they think they're the songs that have survived, and people go, oh, that really reminds me of the 90s, or the 80s. And we get that today where people go, oh, the pop music today is really crap.
Yeah.
Not like Led Zeppelin or some other song. And in reality, you sort of think, well, actually, if you go back to any given era, there's some of the most dreadful, trashy throwaway songs pop music that
you remember the classics.
Yeah, you listen to it and you sort of go, this is awful.
That selection, isn't it?
Whereas, and I'm sure that in another 20, 30 years' time, my kids will be looking back going, the music crap. Back in the 2020s.
Those movies at the Space Brain's called classics. Come on.
There's some of these classics you're going to have trouble getting rid of.
I think so.
Mainly because of the effect that Helen's on. But anyway, there you go. So that's science. But tell me, in this is another one of these 90s action films like Total Recall, Predator. What techniques did they use? Did they do anything better or worse in this movie? Or what do you think?
I think this is really classic Hollywood. If you take things like the lighting and the cinematography, we're looking at really well lit, clean, epic shots like that opening shot of the Hollywood sign and the building. We've talking about like demolishing a whole building. As I said, the trend in these action films to kind of up the ante. And it's probably even, without me thinking about it on too much details, it's probably even why the 90s moved into sci-fi action, because it's kind of like we had all that military action in the 80s. It's like, well, what's the next thing up? Oh, we need to add in science. We need to add in lasers and, cryogenics and other things. And, you end up with then the Matrix at the end, which, at the end of the 90s is the Matrix, which is a huge sci-fi action, which is set again in the 90s, which is the hilarity of it, isn't it? That even though it's in the future, it's again like Demolition Man, set back in the 90s. So they almost are referencing. That's not right. Can't say the word. They're almost like taking the piss on their own culture at the moment in the film.
Yes.
But it's that up the ante. I think every action film, they want to up the ante. And we saw that in the 80s and the 90s action. So it's probably why sci-fi is there. Cinematography, nothing really stood out apart from saying, well, hey, this film follows the rule of thirds. It's really cleanly shot. It's there's epic shots. I think it's more like than the talking about the cinematography. It's more that, they're capturing this epic action, so it's more, how can we push that action? So as we said, demolish an actual building. A guy jumps out of a helicopter and bungee jumps to land, It's how many bad guys can we kill? It's cryogenically freezing people and having huge mechanical arms and those sort of things. So to me, that's where there's more power in this. And it's very Hollywood in that way. I thought the sound, like you mentioned, it's funny, the sound in this film, because not only do we have that song at the end that's a little bit sort of soft compared to what the film is maybe. Also, I noticed like that scene where Phoenix has it happen a couple of times. There's some weird 80s, 90s commercial rap beating going
Yeah,
on
there
that I
was
didn't quite... Like that scene where he does do the computer and all the cops come up to arrest him the first time. There's like a... like a weird rap sound that comes over.
Record scratching, sort of electronic.
It's almost like he's going to do something bad, but I don't know, that took me a little bit out of the scene, but I don't know if I noticed that back in the 90s. Like, I'm not too sure. And then beyond that, nothing really stood out musically to me. You know,
there's
like
a few orchestral hits.
Yeah, there's moments obviously, but it didn't. I don't think it was as powerful. Definitely, the color played a role because you look at the 90s. It's dark, it's bleak, it's night. It's not colorfully lit at all. Whereas then once we're in the future, it's all white and clean and sophisticated. So they definitely did that standard sort of thing. And then when we go underground, again, it's dark and gritty and
greys and
greens, and so it brings it right back down. So I think color-wise played just that symbolic role of, the old versus the future, the clean and all that. I think symbols, which are all those things that you just said for science, like they come back into play. Like, it's really showing us the future and the symbolic of that versus the past. So the fact that, we implant everyone so we know where everyone is, and then everyone pays that way, that makes everything safer because you can't pay for anything, if it's not your microchip. And even the fact that the cops are like, oh, we've tracked him, he stole the car and the car has gone here, we'll just send police, dispatch police. Oh, we've got him, it's like, it's all of the sort of niceties of the future versus what was bad about that bleak, violent, old world of the 90s. Even the sex, I remember, the fact that it is virtual reality, that they kind of have a bit of sexual virtual reality. And Huxley says something along the lines of, fluid transfer, no, there's too many diseases, this is the safer way. And then he even says, well, how do you make children then? And he's like, that's in a lab, like even if you're in love, you wouldn't do that. It's sort of a bit beyond us now, And so it's like, it's quite symbolic to me of how that future plays out. So I liked that. Yeah, but that's about all I probably want to say about filmmaking.
How about, I noticed that there are 3 writers on this one.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the films we've had a look at have only had one writer or maybe a co-writer. 3 writers. I was reading, oh my goodness me, I can't remember who it was now. He was indicating some red flags on movies that were bad. And one of the ones was if the trailer basically tells you the whole story.
Yeah, that's always a good example.
And the other one was...
I agree with that, actually.
If there are 5 or more writers credited.
Yeah.
So this one's got 3 on there, but
I think as a Hollywood film, this ticks all those boxes, don't you think? Like, you got the opposite start to the end. I was very impressed that, as I said to you, like there was so much jam-packed in that first 7 minutes of the film. That really then sets up the rest of the film, doesn't it? But I've seen other films that you could even argue, as with story structure, that 7 minutes could have been 30 minutes. Easy. And in fact, it could have then taken him into Fun and Games was being frozen and then brought back, to part 2. But they crammed all that into 7 minutes.
Yeah, this is the opening image, isn't it?
Yeah. It's pretty much like, because even your inciting incident is then like him being frozen and then being brought back. Like, so they really jammed so much into that opening bit. So I think these 3, I agree. I have seen a few films over time that once you get up to 3 or 4 or 5, sometimes it's like, this film is by so-and-so and so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. And from what my knowledge of the industry is, that means that someone wrote it, then they've bought that script, and then they've given it to other writers to kind of basically rework it, which might mean deleting the whole thing and doing it again. And then someone else has bought it again and given it to other writers. And so you're right, like as soon as you get into the 4th or 5th writing, it can be dodgy. But I don't know the exact details, but I think these 3 guys wrote it together, is what I gauged.
It felt tight enough, I think.
Yeah.
It's
There's the big one-liners that we've talked about. There's lots of those one-liners. Both Phoenix and Stallone have one-liners.
I think we're coming out of with the Demolition Man, and I'd have to check my timelines. I think.
Yeah.
I think we're just coming out of all of that. So this is sort of like one of the last
big action blockbuster where you get one-liners,
where lots of guns firing. There's lots of flashing in your face, because I'm thinking of action movies now, and since The Matrix, I think. The Matrix was a turning point, and we're going to cover The Matrix one day.
Yeah, we will.
Because it is, and this is one of the things that people who are, say, born in the last 20 years and maybe haven't even seen The Matrix, or they've only sort of seen it relatively recently. Those, it's an okay film, it's pretty good. But one thing you got to realise is before The Matrix was Demolition Man, Total Recall, Starship Troopers, RoboCop 1 and 2, all these sorts of things. And then after The Matrix, that's when you started getting some of these ones like, Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, Hansel and Gretel. You got even John Wick and some of these other films which are also like the action hero takes an action, then spins and swoops, and the camera moves around, and like
it changes.
The jacket flies out and smoke. It's all really like, you look at this stuff, which is really raw and brutal, and particularly say Total Recall with all those blood squibs. And they sort of choreographed it, and it's a good style, but sometimes it's nice to have this really brutal, raw action, which is just...
Well, I think that's what I was saying before, that Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone, they threw some punches at each other. I'm not talking like... I think they liked each other and everything like that, but just as actors, they were like, let's just throw a few punches, I remember Mel Gibson saying that, I think with Lethal Weapon, it was the same thing, that they kind of threw a few real punches. They didn't choreograph every single little what you're just saying there. Like once we had The Matrix, where everyone's like, oh my God, this is now how action's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we've got to have a camera swooping under a car as he flies out, and then someone else is punching him, and there's bullets flying. But like, it all becomes slow mode down action to speed it all up, and every little thing is intricate detail, which is cool. Like, don't get me wrong, it's cool. But it's like back in here in the 80s and then the 90s, when this action was going on, it was a little bit more old-fashioned, throw some punches, shoot them up, blood squibs, how many people get shot in the head and all this kind of stuff. And explosions. It was all about those big explosions, I think, is what they went for, wasn't it?
Because they were real fireballs back then.
Yeah, they were real, like they were blowing stuff up. Where some of them are miniatures, and then they're made to look like real. I know that happened a lot. But those miniatures were amazing detail, miniatures. But they were still like, they might have been the size of your fridge.
Yeah.
We're not talking like just a little Lego set. We're talking quite a big thing that they blew up, But yeah, so it's cool action, isn't it? Compared to the action style then changes because of The Matrix. And we'll have to come back to that. So let us know what you thought about Demolition Man. And what we also have spoken about it tonight, whether you agree with the science, with the filmmaking, the narrative structure, too many writers or not enough.
Yeah, how many writers? I've often looked and thought about co-writing like a book or a screenplay or something, and I can imagine it's quite a difficult process.
I think there's good and bad to
work out your workflow and get it going.
I think if you work together and that's how you work, it probably is okay. But maybe if you just came to it the first time, it'd be a bit weird.
I think there'd be great benefits to it, because so many things you can be blind to of your own.
Yeah, it's very true.
Your own stuff, you think it's good enough, I can't be bothered or whatever, and then someone else puts in a bit of extra effort and comes out good. So let us know. You can get a hold of us at gravityundone.net online.
Yep.
Twitter is like Gravity Undone or Space Brains Pod. And Instagram, Facebook, Space Brains
Podcast, yeah. So plenty of places.
Or there's Gravity Undone on those as well.
Yep.
You'll find one through the other if you so choose.
Or just Google Space Brains, and then you'll probably come up with something.
Space Brains on Mandra Mail.
That's right. You'll find us through there now, which is great. Our next episode, we're coming back to something much more recent, an Australian film called Occupation.
Occupado.
By Mr. Spark.
Yeah, Luke Spark.
Spark Industries.
Starring Daniel Ewing.
Yeah, I think that was it from Home and Away.
We got Clone Warrior himself. What's that guy's name?
Once Were Warriors.
Yeah. Ooh, okay.
The Maui guy that I just always forget his name. But anyway, tune in next time for that. Hit us up. Let us know what you think about Demolition Man. And we will see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.